Okay, everyone.
Rookie mistake, sorry.
How are you doing now? Now we're doing good. My apologies for my tardiness. This is the regularly scheduled Board of County Commissioners meeting. It's June 4th. It's 8:37 a.m. Promise Mitch I'd only be 5 minutes late. My apology.
You owe me lunch.
Deal. So then, first thing on the agenda is a
Two of
couple
us.
of administrative items, which Peter Lichtman is going to handle for us. Admin approval of marijuana license. Consideration of approval of medical marijuana store license renewal for Exit 240 LLC, Exit 243.
So for that one, staff recommends approval. This is an admin approval, as you indicated, so just a head nod from the board is appreciated. There are no objections.
Okay. Seeing staff is recommending approval. I'll pause for 2 seconds to hear concerns from my colleagues. Hearing no concerns, it's approved. Item number 2, consideration of approval of disclosure of changes exempt from the change of owner application, Exit 243 LLC and investments, etc. LLC.
Same thing. No objections by staff. We recommend approval on this. It's the same thing in administrative approval.
Okay, I will give my colleagues 2 seconds to offer thoughts. Hearing none, that is administratively approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. If you're here to make a public comment, please come on up and you will have, hi Steve, you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name, roughly where you live.
Sure. Steve, Roll, hey Randy. Live on Beaverbrook Canyon Road. We've been up there about 27 years. So the comment is just about, I've been talking to Brian about it, the road maintenance with Bear and Stoy and stuff, and just trying to get a beat on how we can improve what we have going on, because it just seems to be sort of falling off over the years. But traffic is increasing because we now have a, open space parking lot up there, which has people parking on the road and sometimes using the parking lot that's there and not really being good about how to avoid, washboards and things like that. But the bigger thing is lately like the last 3 snowstorms, we haven't had plowing on the weekend. And I understand, it's not like anyone hasn't told me there's staffing shortages at Road and Bridge. So there's 5 open positions, I understand. So 3 weekend storms, we didn't get plowed on the weekend. They plowed on the weekday. The big concern there is if there's an ambulance that tries to go up there on a Saturday or Sunday and it can't get up there, that's going to be an issue. So we plow our section of road, we take care of it. So some days like that, we'll run a swipe down the canyon, which is 4 miles. It's a long way. So not something we want to take on since we already pay Road and Bridge taxes. We'd obviously love that to be taken on by Road and Bridge. Our maintenance has gone down. We have these huge, they're like, I don't even know what you call them. They get all wet and it just becomes a pit that you can drive over, but it just gets all squishy. It's about the size of your table. So sometimes you can go around them, sometimes you can't. We can all drive around them and through them. We all have 4-wheel drive. We know what it takes to get around up there, but it's very difficult. And then nothing really happens when they dry out. They don't get graded back over because we don't really get a spring grading anymore. When spring comes, we used to get a grading. We'd get one like midsummer. We'd get one at the end of the year, probably 3, I guess, over the course of the season. That doesn't seem to be happening much anymore either. So I guess what we're looking for is there's obviously money with the 5 positions that aren't filled. Can those be used to pay overtime? Can they hire subcontractors to take care of some of this work? To do repairs and, talking to Story, I understand it's real. You guys have a huge water hole in the middle of Soda Creek Road. And if that's not fixed, I don't think ours is going to get fixed. So I get it. But we'd like to just have some attention paid to it, especially since more traffic has been diverted up there with this trailhead, which we would love not to be there since our road is single lane in some spots. And it's just a difficult road. I understand it's a secondary road, but it did used to get better maintenance than it's getting, and we'd like to see it at least get plowed on weekends. After a bunch of storms, maybe the grader comes and pushes the snowbanks back so they don't all drain on the road for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they used to do all that, and it would just be nice if we could kind of get some sort of plan to have our road taken care of a little better. We don't expect it perfect, just maintenance. So that's it.
And I know we don't do dialogue at public comment, but can you clarify which road are you talking about?
So Beaverbrook Canyon is where the high school's on Beaverbrook Canyon Road, so it's paved for like a mile. And then it's 3 miles of dirt until it turns private, and we take care of the private, and you guys usually come up to the turnaround at the end where all the mailboxes are.
Okay. Thank you. We will probably ask our staff to comment on this during manager update. Any other context you can provide?
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Kroll.
thanks.
Any other public comment? If you're on Zoom, you can press the raise hand button. Hearing no other public comment, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. Next thing on the agenda is an interview for the vacancy on the Clear Creek County Open Space Commission. Is Mr. Barton present?
Yes, right here. There you go.
That one?
Yes, sure. And there.
Hi. Hello, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your application to serve on the Clear Creek County Open Space Commission. We're gonna open it up to commissioners to ask you some questions about your interest. Maybe you can just start by just kind of describing who you are, and what your motivation is to be on the Open Space Commission.
Yeah,
And I'll open with gratitude for applying.
okay, yeah. Alan Barton, go by AJ Barton. I work at Summit County School District. I do the budget and accounting for them. You know, been in government work for a while, and just, you know, I'm from Dallas, you know, a few years ago, moved up here. I know the Texas comment, sorry, guys. It's not California though. And, you know, it was involved there, you know, a lot with my community. Been here for 2.5 years up in Idaho Springs. I live, do you know where the Phoenix Gold Mine is? Just live at the top of that mountain up there. And, you know, just kind of want to give back, you know. I'm on boards up in Summit County for work, you know, did a lot in Dallas, and kind of just is that time, you know, you reach that part of your life where you're like, okay, I have some free nights, I can get back, and yeah, about it. Colorado's so beautiful, you know, that's why you come here. And I mean, open space is kind of what this is about, you know, so kind of want to be a part of it if I can help. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Randy, Mitch, who wants to start?
I did read through your application, and thank you, for all your responses. I think, a number of them, diversity and backgrounds, for example, in our groups and so forth, what would make our boards as good as they can be, I think is a good starting point, especially. You mentioned the balance between development and preservation, and as well as the county's economy and its impact on revenues. And I heard people numerous times bring that up as an issue, and they can come from all over the universe on that in terms of what they're really thinking about when they mention that. Can you expound on that a little bit and let us know your thoughts about that, or what you think is most important when considering the balance between development and preservation?
Yeah, I think we should, you know, obviously develop when it's necessary and we can. But I think to save, you know, those special pieces of beautiful nature when we can too, for the public to enjoy. I think that's a responsibility that, you know, we have to balance that out. And, you know, I would just like to see, I see so many people going by I-70, you know, just going up to Breckenridge and Summit County. And I mean, we have so many beautiful spots here, you know, that I would just like to, you know, draw more attention to that, and maybe have people not go so far up, you know, bring some tourist dollars and stuff more into just stopping by the subway and, you know, in Idaho Springs. So,
Thanks, I appreciate that. I would recommend looking at some of the visitation data on some of the beautiful spots we have right now. And, and it's just, well, anyway, we're here to interview you and not expound. I think we know.
No, I appreciate
I'll
the.
I'll let it go from there right now.
How do you, excuse me, how do you see your background in finance supporting?
Well, I mean, I know there's a budget, you know what I mean? I can help with that. I literally do the budget for the Summit County School District, so been in finance for over 20 years. You know, ran the second largest region for Loan Depot. It's the second largest mortgage lender in the country. Ran all of California, Boise, Idaho, part of Nevada. So, you know, just love for up here and nature and open spaces and, you know, bringing communities together. And I think that mixed with, you know, my finance background, if there is a need, you know, then basically that's what I'm here for. If there's a need, you know, I'm here to help. If not, okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate those questions. In reading your application, I see you, and thanks again for applying. I see you right about, I mean, kind of the central tension on the Open Space Commission. You write, you want to make sure that our open spaces are protected, properly maintained, and accessible to all members of the community. How can you talk a little bit about your approach to trying to strike that balance?
Maybe just to get it out there. Where are these open spaces? You know what I mean? Like, I've lived here 2.5 years. You know, I would like to see more, you know, maybe spotlights on some, you know, like do a monthly spotlight on this open space, you know, or, you know, have, you know, I know with budgeting and, you know, taking public dollars, it's tricky because I mean, I know all about it. So, you know, there's just little fundraisers or park cleanups or, you know, stuff like that. I think kind of bringing awareness to the ones that people don't know about. And, you know, that'll get the community more into protecting them. You know, if I don't know, if I brought my family to a park and, you know, like it wasn't that great, I'd probably pitch in to help because, you know, my family liked that park. So I think bringing that awareness, you know, would help with that balance of preservation and maintenance. You know?
Okay. Thank you. I think the next question, I think the way I'm going to frame it is, when you imagine yourself or others enjoying open space properties, what do you imagine them doing?
Whatever they legally can do. I mean, you know, just kind of I like to go, you know, to places, hang out, take a walk, take a hike, you know, just kind of pick up some trash, you know, like, you know, look at the birds and look at the water and kind of hang out. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a huge camper, you know, I mean, I live up here, so, but I assume people like to camp, but that's, for me, that's just kind of strolling around and taking a little hike and looking at the scenery. Yeah.
Thank you. That's kind of how I use these open spaces too. Pretty casual, pretty low impact.
Yep.
I'm curious, how do you think about all the different types of uses that people want to engage in that don't always get along well together?
Yeah.
Like, do you have any initial thoughts about how you would manage like a property
Yeah.
with a lot of pressure and a lot of different types of uses that don't get along? Like, how would you be thinking about that?
I mean, being from Texas and growing up on lakes, you know, we went to open spaces all the time. They kind of divide it. You know what I mean? You go down this road, you can camp, you know, you can park your RVs and camp, and over here's, you know, the day camping and the sites, maybe dividing those up or, you know, like rotating it, you know? I mean, what's wrong with rotating? You know, like if, hey, come and camp this weekend. This is the kind of camping we can do. You know, you could do this week, next week, it's this. I mean, just some ideas, not knowing all, you know, the facets of it all. And, you know, I'm eager to learn. But I would say, you know, there's plenty of room for everybody. Like, you know, just have everybody kind of get along and divide it up if we need to, or, or rotate what can be done during those times. I think, I mean, I don't know all the logistics behind that, but I would, from the top of my head, I'd be like, well, that seems easy,
Yeah.
or fair.
I can assure you, it's the kind of conversation that feels very casual and then gets really rich.
And then it's
fast.
not. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'd love to dig in more, and learn about it and then come up with some better solutions when I have the research. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think just lastly, I want to ask you about just how you view the role. So the Open Space Commission
Yep.
is a policy advisory body.
Yep.
It recommends budgets, it recommends policies on how to use these spaces. Can you just talk to me a little bit about your experience on other commissions and like how you think commissions can be helpful to the work of a board, to an organization, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm on the finance committee for Summit County, so, we have so many issues and you only have a certain, the pot's only so big. And you kind of rank those in a matrix of, priority and what best meets your, strategic goals. And then you kind of divide it up that way, because you can only do what you can do. And I think that strategy is good. I'm going to do that there. I was the head of the United Way for Citigroup. Back when it was like huge for Dallas, for all of Dallas. We did the same thing. We kind of just took, here's all the issues. We know we can't fix them all. What's the biggest priority? You kind of lay those out. Somebody comes out, we come up with the grading metrics and say, okay, wherever it falls, that's where the dollars go. So I think I would, take that same initiative, that approach that's worked in several other, advisory boards I've been on. And I would take that to conquer those kind of things and issues and kind of give a priority
Okay.
to things. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions. Maybe Randy and Mitch thought of one or two.
I think, I guess primarily I've been listening to the answers to those multiple questions and, what I'm hearing is that there's plenty of land to go around, enough so that we can parcel it out to different kinds of uses to avoid conflict and also market it more in order to be able to bring more people to it so that we can have more people in our forest as we perceive to be going on in other places in the mountains. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, I wouldn't want to get too heavily into it. Between the captured recreation that we have, that's developed recreation and dispersed recreation, there are different characteristics to different areas. And I would point out that we, in the Arapahoe Roosevelt National Forest, if you take out ski area days, which eliminates the Uintah in Washington and the White in Colorado, we're number 3 in the nation as far as the most heavily visited forest in the nation right now. And and if you take out skier days, which are counted because there are robust ski economies in both of those other 2 forests, we're actually far and away the number 1 most heavily visited forest in the nation. And that's because we are the 5 counties that are wrapping around the Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins area. And particularly in Clear Creek County, the heaviest transportation conduit is I-70 going west, delivering those people into the mountains. And so if you kind of think of it like the mountains are a sponge and you're firing water into a leaky hose that gets backed up sometimes with congestion and the water starts spewing out, the part of the sponge that's the closest to the source of the water, which is the water being the people. Yep. And the source being Denver, you can guess what happens in terms of, so I think, and I think one other thing to consider when you're thinking about that is that basically Colorado, and if you've only been here a couple of years, it's hard to get that, you see these pictures of green mountains and I grew up in Oklahoma, so I know the difference, of what it looks like. It looks very lush, but we're actually a high mountain desert with a very thin veneer of life over a bunch of granite and sand and stuff like that. And,
yeah, I can't even grow grass in my house. Yeah.
So we've been told by the 14ers initiative, for example, that when somebody takes 1 or 2 runs up the hill in motorized recreation or even other forms of recreation, that once you scratch down through to that rock underneath, it will only naturally restore itself within hundreds of years. And I see that from stuff I see that happened 40 years ago. When I've been here about 52 years, and I've seen that happen now. And I've seen the places that people scratched when I've been here 40 to 45 years ago, and they look almost the same as they did that day. So so in terms of attracting more people, I think we just need to, I would advise you to think about those factors, that we're very close to a huge, rapidly expanding population. We're the most easily accessible piece of the forest that's close to it, and we're the most heavily visited forest in the nation right now. And anyway, sorry, George, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I took so long to spit that out, but I wanted to make sure that those thoughts were viscerally communicated.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, I wasn't speaking of the big ones. Just the little ones, the little local open spaces that, families can come in and have a picnic at, was more my direction I was going with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah. So do you have any questions of us?
No.
Okay. To give you a sense of the process moving forward, we try to be prompt in making these decisions. I think what we're going to do is ask staff to put this on the agenda for discussion at our next meeting. And we'll make a decision.
Yep, here to help if not the right fit, not the right fit. But I am here to give my time if you need it.
I appreciate your volunteerism. And you may be contacted by one or all three of us to help us if we have other questions come up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
Okay. Next on the agenda, discussion regarding the naming of an unnamed geographic location in Clear Creek County to Snicktaw Tarn. We've got Beth Luther and Kevin, I'm not going to get your last name right. Sal?
And I think he's crossing over.
Yep, he's there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to state, just for the record, that the reason I'm on virtually today is that I've been sick for about 2 or 3 days. I have tested twice. It is negative for COVID. However, it is nothing that you want to mess with, and I have not come in as a courtesy to everybody else that's in the room right now. I don't mean to just be lazy and hang out in my house.
Yeah, infectiousness when it comes to personality is one thing, but I appreciate you staying at home.
Exactly how did you mean infectiousness with regard to personality?
You're influential, what can I say? Anyway, let's get started. Beth, are you kicking us off or
Well, I
Kevin.
can introduce is it Mr. Sell? Is that right?
It's Selly, like jelly with an S. How are y'all?
All right. Thank you. We received a request from him and one of the contractors who helps to rename unnamed geographical locations. This one happens to be in Clear Creek County. Mr. Sully has gone through the process of contacting the contractor and the USBGN. And as you could see in your packet, he included some maps and, the actual location of the tarn. And I don't know, Mr. Sully, I'll let you take it from here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very envious of all of you. I'm in Amarillo, Texas, where I live, and it is flat and I need mountains. And so I'm jealous of everybody there. We came with some friends of ours to Colorado and that area for the first time 3 years ago and just absolutely fell in love. We've been back every year. I'm waiting to come this summer. The backstory on the lake is long, so I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights. And if you want me to fill things in, please let me know. But like I said, 3 years ago, we came for the first time, and friends of ours have been coming a couple of years prior. And at one point, we were driving up Loveland Pass, and I was just marveling at the mountains and missing the mountains that we don't have here in the Panhandle. And at one point, as we got close to Loveland Pass, I looked up on the ridge and I thought, wait a minute, what is that? And there were people up there. And I said, what is going on? And they were hiking. And they'd started there at Loveland Pass and were working their way up that ridge. And I said, well, I need to figure that out. How do I get it done? I was unable to do it on that trip. And so we'd planned the following year to come, and I did a little bit of research on climbing up to Mount Sticktow. Unfortunately, about a week and a half before our trip, I came down with COVID. And so that didn't make sense to do much hiking at 13,000 feet shortly after COVID. And so that kind of ruined my day. But then I got obsessed with getting up into that place for the next year, which would have been last year. I found the All Trails map, and in between those two trips, I look, and still to this day, I look at that trail and the pictures that people post every day. I just became more familiar with the trail and more excited about the trail. And then I started seeing, especially once the snow melted, this lake down there on the south side of the summit. And it's one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. And I got more obsessed with it and more obsessed with it. And I wanted to know if it had a name because I wanted to refer to it. And I started looking around, and the two lakes that are just to the south of Loveland Pass have names on Google Maps, like Paz and Pass Lake. And so in becoming obsessed with that particular lake south of the summit, I became obsessed with the fact that it didn't have a name. And last year we'd planned to go once again, and I was going to make a specific trip to hike that trail. It would have been my first mountain hike also, and I'd planned to mark my 60th birthday with that hike. And 10 days before, with no previous health trouble, my heart stopped while I was driving. And I ran off the road, totaled the car. I woke up, was enough to call 911. Everybody showed up, and 2 hours later, I had a pacemaker. So sort of like the COVID incident the year before, driving off the road and getting a pacemaker was not conducive to hiking a mountain trail. So it got delayed again. But after the pacemaker was installed and all of the health things settled a little bit, 2.5 months later, in August of last year, we were able to come up, and I was able to hike that trail. And it was one of the greatest things I've ever done. I just enjoyed it so much. But I was so much looking forward to seeing that lake. And I kind of had a sense from the pictures of where I would be able to see it on the trail. And I covered my eyes. And as I got up to the ridge, past the false summit there, I looked, and I was not disappointed. And so I became more obsessed with giving a name to that lake. And so I started the process with USGS about trying to find a name. And I learned right out the bat, you can't just show up and say, hey, I want to call it Lake Kevin, which I wouldn't have done, but you need some sort of a reason. So I got obsessed with Sticktow as a name, and you folks being where you are probably know the history better than I do, but I've gotten pretty deep into the history of the word. And Mr. Patterson, it was his nom de plume, and he lived there in Georgetown. And this year when we come, I'm going to go to the cemetery where he is and see his gravesite, because I just want to see that. But I learned some of the history of that word, and if you want to know more, I'm happy to do it. But I wanted to find some reason for giving it a name that was locally important. And Sticktow has a Native American connection to it. It's also connected possibly to a different person at the same time named Watkins. And I dug, and I dug, and I dug, and I dug, trying to find some word, especially in the Native American context, that would give this thing a name. And I just kept digging. I contacted tribes. I had an email exchange with somebody at UC Berkeley in the Native American Languages Department. He eventually told me I probably wasn't going to find the meaning of that word, but I wanted to try and attach something to that little pond, and couldn't find it. So I just came back to the word Sticktow, but in my research, I found the word Tarn, which is a small mountain lake. And so that's how I came up with my submission of Sticktow Tarn. And the reason I wanted is I'm obsessed with it, and I want other people that go up and hike that wonderful trail to be able to look down. And I sent a couple of pictures to Ms. Luther, and there's some in the proposal as well. But the blue of that lake is just the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I want people to stand on that mountaintop and ridge and be able to go, that's Sticktow Tarn. So that was a long version of my short version. There's more history. I have, diary pages copied from the folks at the Colorado Historical Society, from Mr. Patterson. And I can talk about this forever because I don't know why I got obsessed, but I just did. But hopefully that wasn't too long or too short. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. And I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all. Did I mention I'm jealous of where you live?
Excellent. Thank you for that. Beth, do you have anything to add before?
No, we do have a form that is, it's the same form that we did for Mount Blue Sky and the other pass. So it's the BGN form that we fill out and send to them. They share it with the Colorado Bureau of Geographic Naming. So it's, you know, whatever you guys decide.
Okay, thank you. Randy, I see your hand is up.
Thank you for noticing. I appreciate that. I didn't know if it would, it's hard to sit in meetings and notice the guy that's on Zoom or the woman, whoever's on Zoom, and see their hand up sometimes in these virtual, in hybrid setting. Mr. Sully, I had just a couple of questions, and it's not the long answer I'm looking for with the diaries and everything. It's more just the short one. And I had two questions. The first one is, when you said that you learned that there were, that there was a Native American connection to the name Snicktow, and so you contacted tribes. The first question is, how did you, from where did you learn that there was a Native American connotation or derivation of the word? And then secondly, which tribes did you contact?
Probably in a couple of places. I mean, I think I started where everybody starts, on Wikipedia, and drilled down and saw it in various places. And my understanding of the translation, if you will, of the word is prepared for or ready for any emergency. I did try and contact the Arapaho tribe, and I'm blanking at this moment. I don't have notes in front of me, and I apologize. Is Comanche in the area as well in Colorado?
Primarily,
Cheyenne.
that area is Ute land, and there are some Cheyenne and Arapaho have trucked up there a bit too.
Yeah. I don't have specifically in my notes, and I apologize for not having them in front of me. I know Arapaho. I didn't receive any information back. I tried to do my best to find the contact information for those tribes. And again, the really only substantive response I got was from UC Berkeley. Oh, and the second part of your question was what? I'm sorry.
Well, it was from where did you learn that there was a Native American derivation? You said you thought from Wikipedia, and I just looked on Wikipedia and I see refers to the pen name of Edwin H.N. Patterson, who
Yes.
referred, and Patterson claimed to have received the name Snicktow from Native Americans, although it may simply have been adopted from a fellow journalist.
Yes.
So yeah, I can understand why maybe you weren't able to.
Yeah, my understanding is he went west for the gold rush, and that the Snicktow may have actually come in California. But the copies of the diary pages that I have, I am 97% sure that I see the word in his hand in there. Another person has argued with me on that a little bit, but it kind of fit in the context of the sentence that it was in. I kind of think it was, I have to fill in a lot of blanks, but my guess is that if it was the Native American connection, that he may have provided some sort of assistance while traveling westward to Native Americans, and that's how he came across that word. And when I started the process, I thought, well, that seems to make some sense. This little pond is created on the southeast or southwest facing face of the mountain in what we can almost call a bowl there. So I thought, well, if there's some Native American connection, that would be an important and legitimate reason to go that direction. I just couldn't get far enough to make a connection to pick another word, which is why I came back to Snicktow. I hope that answered your question. There's a lot of little pieces.
Yeah, I don't want to dominate the conversation too much. I just want to say that it's not that we necessarily have to name everything in the area, and even tribes would agree with this after give everything around here a Native American name. There's plenty of room to give different kinds of names to different places.
Sure.
But when we do choose to give a Native American name to something or claim that there's a Native American source, it's always a good idea to prove it or through the Native Americans that were in the area or let go of it and not claim that, because
Yes.
the places that we've gone the most afoul of is when we decide as colonizers to name things after what we think are Native American names without
Right.
consulting and proving it. And it's okay to name it Mount whatever Yankee Stadium if you want
Yeah.
to, but if you do name it after something that's purported to be a Native American source, you kind of have to confirm the source and make sure that it's right, because that's where we've gotten it the most wrong, is when we try to appropriate that language and that culture and find out that we
Yes.
did right because we read our own books instead of consulting.
Well, and
And
I
that-
appreciate you saying that very much, because that is exactly my point. I dug and dug and dug, and I couldn't find a connection. Because the person at Berkeley said, look, there are so many dialects and so many little regional things, and then translation, that it could have been something that was, misinterpreted when Mr. Pattison heard it and he wrote it down differently. And so it just kind of drifted off to where there was no connection. And that was when I went backwards and thought, okay, well, I can't find a connection there. And I pulled the thread of Watkins, who was another journalist. And if you spell Snicktow backwards and change the U to a W, that's where that came from. And I couldn't find a path there either. But I dug because I was passionate about it and because it kind of turned into fun.
Okay, thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Certainly. Mitch, thoughts, questions?
No, I really liked Randy's observation about making sure that if one takes the time to place a name, that it actually fits. I was pondering the same thing, so he said it well.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I am struggling with this one a little bit too. It seems like every time a geographic name comes up, there's also an interesting story about the origin of that name, right? A governor who'd been forced to resign, whose wife got a mountain named after him later. A journalist who, I'm just my take of the facts is it seems very likely that this person made this name up. I'm not gonna, start the revolution to think about the name Mount Snicktaw. Maybe somebody else has some time for that. I'm just not sure that we want to continue to use that name, given the high likelihood that this is not a Native American name, that this was, I'm not sure the right way to describe this, but I don't think that anybody would, I hope people wouldn't be comfortable with the idea that is a name that somebody, is this, like, I don't know what the phrase is here. Is this cultural appropriation? It's not even really that. Like, it's something that's not quite respectful. I'll stop rambling because I'm kind of struggling with this one.
I get your point. If I could jump in, I do. The current name was given in 1926. And so part of my digging in and then backing out again was that this has existed for nearly 100 years. And so that's what made sense, as opposed to me trying to come up with something else. And at the end of the day, I'm not married to this name. My real motivation was, again, to give it a name so that people could identify it, and it had a place, and it had something on Google Maps and in USGS, because it's just a magical spot. I don't know if I assume some of you have been up there, but it just needs one.
Beautiful.
I think I'm feeling very much like George does here. The thing that kind of raised my eyebrows, and we've had a pretty intense recent history over the last 4 to 5 years of some renaming subjects in this county, and have kind of tried to get it right, work very hard to get it right with, our indigenous citizens, our Native American friends, and knowing that that's Ute territory primarily, I think to actually make sure that we've confirmed, because the fact that someone may have claimed a Native American source for that name sometime in the past and named it. And the fact that it's been 100 years doesn't really mean a lot. Mount Evans had been Mount Evans for 128 years when we renamed it just a couple of years ago. And so if you found that that a Native American tribe was going to justifiably, because someone was doing some kind of a cultural, some kind of appropriation, if they were, they may just say, hey, we don't really care. You may not even get a response. But I think before I would be comfortable moving forward with an endorsement from the county for this name, I would want to hear from the Ute Mountain Ute, the Southern Ute, and possibly even the Northern Ute, the former two are in Colorado and the latter is in Utah, at least their headquarters. I'd want to know what their response was to this idea with a little background behind it, with the same background you've given us. And thank you for doing it so thoroughly. Thank you for your interest in it. And I'm just one person talking. This is my input to this conversation. And if it turns out that it's not the right name, I think that, I mean, I would have no problem if you were to go back to the drawing board and figure out a better one, you know?
Well, and I'd appreciate any input on that, because I did my journey, and since I'm not from there, this is what I came up to. But if there is something that rises as culturally important, because that's the whole foundation of naming things anyway, when you start to dig into USGS, I think that's completely appropriate. I'm just not there. You know, I don't think we want to call it Kevin's Heart Stopped While Driving Lake. But that's part of my connection to it.
And actually, it's a good story, though. I'm not like George. I'm also not really probably inclined to take on the see me to take on a charge right now to change the name of SNCTAW based on what we learned from you today. But rather than extend that further, I'd want to consult with the tribes before we did that.
And so let me ask then, is that something that y'all would do? Because I went as far as I think I know, especially not getting much back. If y'all have connections and want to make them, I would encourage that. If you want me to do it, I would be happy to do that as well, because I'm bound and determined to name that thing.
I'm pretty sure that Jenny Runyon at the BGN is going to do generally on these renamings, they send stuff out to like every tribe in America. And as a result, they get nothing back usually because it's a standard rote thing. So I would probably, I wouldn't have any problem myself with talking to Ms. Runyon and just finding out what we can do to be a little more surgical with regard to contacting the two Ute tribes and their understanding of that. And in Colorado at a minimum, and seeing if we can't dig out an answer from them, because otherwise it gets lost. You know, they govern just the way we do, and they have 1,000 things going on. It might be that unreturned email if it goes the route.
Well,
So,
I'd certainly appreciate that effort, and I would be happy to participate in it, and obviously be kept in the loop.
I think it seems like we have two options. And maybe before I describe the options I see, Mitch, do you have any thoughts to add?
No.
Okay. I think the options that I think I could support would be tabling this. And so that whoever is working to find an appropriate name can keep working. I also would be happy to submit a response that says something along the lines of, we're happy to see this wonderful town be named. We'd like to have a name that, is free of any potential weirdness in history. That's a technical term. Does that, which of those options sounds right? I kind of want to, part of my motivation here is I know our staff has a lot going on, and I don't want our staff to take this on as a project, which leans me towards saying, here's our opinion. This tarn should have a name, and the name shouldn't have complicated history associated with it. It should have a clear history that we know and that the tribes support. Even actually, on the tribes piece, I'm not even sure it has to be a name that the tribes support, but if it's going to get anywhere close to Native American history, then that's a requirement.
that's the point I was trying to make. And I kind of prefer your former, the tabling it for right now while we find out, George. And I think the part of the reason is because as I recall that form, that's where we kind of got into trouble before with staff. Where we, the form, they sent back something that was ambiguous, kind of like that, not, this is not ambiguous, but it was sort of fuzzy around the edges and it went back. And they came back and the BGN came back to us and the form said, no, you either have to check the yes box or the no box with regard to the application at hand, which is for Mount Snicktaw or for Snicktaw Tarn. And so we came up with a communication that was very much like this, which was that we had no position on it at this time. And they said, no, you have to take a position, yes or no. And so knowing that, I'd kind of like, and I also agree that staff shouldn't be doing that. And because of the work that I've done on it before, I don't mind digging in myself and just trying to find that answer over the next couple of weeks or something like that, next short period of time.
So not today.
Okay, so then,
I'm just kidding.
I can live with the option of tabling this. Mitch, how about you?
That works.
Peter, give me some guidance here. Is this an action session?
It is not an action session and you do not need to do anything.
We don't need a motion to table it. Well, thank you for the conversation, Kevin. Mr. Sells, got it wrong again.
Ellie.
Sally.
Sally, yeah, thanks.
And I think as far as next steps, maybe you and Randy, Beth, can you get Randy his contact info? And we await with bated breath the resolution of this.
You
Okay.
you took the words right out of my mouth. I need a phone number, so.
Yeah, very good. Well, listen, y'all, thanks very much. Again, I'm super envious of where you live. Can't wait to come back this summer. I hope to. I've actually had just another heart procedure earlier this month, but I'm feeling good and I'm ready to come back and hike that trail again. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. And there are homes for sale.
As soon as I get all the medical issues out, I am ready.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, County Commissioner updates. Who would like to start? Randy, Mitch?
I can start. I had the opportunity to spend time with senior staff during the last week. It was nice to put faces to names, spend time understanding the work they do and the challenges they face. I'm also continuing to absorb the volumes of documents that have been produced by staff over the last few years. Next one up on my plate is the communication plan for the county, and I'm going to dive into a second read on the fire authority report. And that covers it.
Okay. Randy?
Mine's gonna be really short because I'm sick and I don't feel like talking very long, despite the amount of time I spent on the last subject. I did attend my first JCMH board meeting last night. At the current time, Mr. Holtzman Chad is still attending it on the board, so which confuses me a little because of the communication that we'd gotten about previously about it being reduced to only two representatives for the two representatives for the two counties. But in any case, it doesn't really matter. I went there. It was an interesting meeting and took care of that. Also, we're making a lot of progress over at NOCO, but I'm not gonna get into that right now with regard to some communication stuff that's going on. And some really interesting metrics about which of our methods of communication of our the metrics for evaluating the effectiveness of our different methods of communication of responsible recreation. We're getting real good information that might help us with some of our tourism and our own recreation metrics as well to understand the effectiveness of our policies. But I won't get into that in detail today, but there may be some examples to bring back. And really, there's some other stuff I could go through, my schedule for the last couple of weeks, but I don't think I'm gonna, and talk about everything else that's come up, but I don't think I'm gonna do that right now.
Okay, I've got 5 things written down. First is really just a heads up related to this ongoing effort to prop up our local childcare system. As a reminder, one of the programs that families rely on in Clear Creek isn't available this year because of the elementary school move. I don't have a ton of details on how many seats were lost, but I know there are several families that are trying to figure out something. We had a presentation about helping use the Georgetown Community School for a summer childcare facility. That fell through. The way that the conversation is evolving is that Barely Tall, which is a market rate childcare center on Floyd Hill, has 7 open seats. I'm being told that those 7 open seats are due to the high price of market rate childcare. Barely Tall does not accept CCAP. We have lodging tax funds that can help with childcare. I was called to ask if it was an immediate no, whether I am interested in helping fill in a gap and get families into those 7 seats. My answer to that is yes. A lot of questions about how that can work. And so that's just a heads up for you guys that is coming. I also have recommended that I really think that maybe a more practical approach is home-based childcare, which is eligible for CCAP. And so I just want you all to know that I'm working with these families and looking for partners that could execute a scholarship program with county funds, with lodging tax funds, or something. And something may develop that could come to this board and give us an opportunity to help some families. So welcome any thoughts on that?
Summer's gonna be over if we don't make a decision soon.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And it's my perspective is it's less about this board's willingness to invest and more about just is there a partner out there that can put a program together? I don't think our staff can. I'm not prepared to ask our staff to do that because of all the other things we have going on. But I hope that I'm not miscommunicating and sharing that this board is likely to be willing to invest if we have a program that we think is viable.
And I think they have other sources of revenue too, so we could be matching,
Yes, yes. It's a great point.
which feels better.
That does feel better.
Yeah,
Randy?
I completely agree. And I think having those other sources also contributes to that viability. I mean, ultimately, something like this should be a sustainable program, but also knowing that it has more than one leg trying to prop it up is a good thing. I also want to emphasize that if we have any reluctance we show is only trying to find the right model, but I also agree with Mitch that summer flies by very quickly. And the problem that we were trying to solve is one for this year, this summer as a stopgap measure primarily. I mean, we're looking for the long range, of course. We're not just trying to do this for 1 year. But the point is the problem that was brought to us is the issue that we have right now. And if we talk for too long, the kids will be back in school.
Okay, excellent. The way that I sort of shared what the county's capability is that if it's a program that we have to run, like we're going to end up issuing RFPs and finding the right people, and it's going to be August. And so like my strong recommendation is that if there's an organization out there that can like turn on a scholarship program, then, you know, let us know where to mail the check. That's about the engagement that we can do. Next, I want to bring up the non-maintained roads topic. Brian, I know you're going to comment on Steve Kroll's public comment. We had directed staff to start to build an understanding of materials delivery on non-maintained roads. I want to expand, my curiosity about our road system is expanding. And so I want to expand that ask. And I do this in acknowledgement that we are understaffed and I'm looking at you, Stoy. I'm aware that we're understaffed in planning as well. And so our road engineer is doing a lot of other stuff. I think we'll be hearing from him later today. That said, I think we really do need to understand, I need to understand better what's going on our non-maintained road system. I'd like to know how many miles there are, when the last time maintenance was done. A number of these roads have culverts in them. I assumed at one point they were installed using county dollars. And I'm not trying to figure out how to insist that we go fix all these roads. I know that we have financial constraints. I need help better describing the problem and the scale of the problem, because it seems like our non-maintained roads have degraded a lot over the last 15 years due to a number of factors. And I'm getting a lot of contact from constituents and just need to be able to explain, like, here's how many road miles we're talking about and what it would take. So if you can sort of add that to the list of things information I'm asking for, that would be helpful.
Do you want me to cover that now or during my update?
Go ahead.
Well, the first thing I have to say is that just because it's loud does not mean that all of our non-maintained roads are in much worse shape than they were 15 years ago. That you can't, so I need Phil need to say that, but so that work that you've requested from us on the non-maintained roads has not happened yet. We haven't even started it yet. And there's multiple reasons for that. One, our finance director is leaving and what she was part of that conversation, or at least the broader conversation that you had asked for originally in terms of how can we assist some of these areas with with these non-maintained roads. But more importantly, our public works team is struggling right now. They're down 12 staff, 12 FTEs, right? So we're down we're a transfer station manager of labor at the transfer station. We're down an engineering tech. We're down 2 drivers in transit. We're down 4 road and bridge operators. Mr. Kroll said 5, and he got that number from me. I didn't realize that we had factored in someone who was leaving. We're down 3 mechanics. Those mechanics repair the heavy equipment that our heavy operators have to get inside of. So there's a compounding problem with our ability to get out to these secondary maintained roads. I mean, that's the bottom line. And then when you combine that with the fact that the operators that we do have, we do not allow them to take extended vacations in the winter because they got to be here to plow roads. So what does that mean? Many of them want to take their vacations during the summer, when now we're hearing folks wanting their non-maintained or secondary maintained roads repaired. So this is it's a much broader problem that we're having right now. And we're doing everything we can with respect to our HR team in terms of our recruitments. We're recruiting at the top of the pay range. If you recall that when we did our compensation analysis 2 years ago, our road and bridge staff was the one team that we actually funded all the way to 100%. We're going to do another comp analysis this summer. But that's the long and short of it. It's a resource problem. It's a resource problem. And then not to mention the tax that was passed did not contemplate increased services on these kinds of roads.
Yeah, it didn't contemplate the kind of labor inflation that we saw, right? When did we run that? 2019?
No, I was here, so 21.
21?
It was in November 21.
Okay. Randy, is that in old hand or do you owe us donuts or do you have something to say?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if, Brian, if your response was intended as a counter argument. It didn't sound like one to me because it actually supported what I was hearing George saying, which is that there's a staffing problem that we have that's a result of the difficult labor market. And you gave us a lot of the details, the specifics of how you're impacted by that. And I heard him acknowledge that at the beginning. The part I would take some issue with is, and just knowing this from history, is that there has been a degradation of the non-maintained roads, not the secondary maintained roads, but the ones that are actually non-maintained. And I mean, I can see that anecdotally going out there over the years. And I know that in the past, when we didn't have this staffing issue, even the non-maintained roads, when we would get reports that they had become, after 2 or 3 years of heavy use, a lot of that recreational use, they did, and that and erosion, just weather and everything else over time. Roads deteriorate when they're not maintained. And so every once in a while, road and bridge did have the capacity to get out and make a pass. Maybe if it was only every 2 or 3 years, they'd get a grader up somewhere and maybe a dozer and knock out some of the rocks that had come through the surface, or do a little fill here and there and make them where they were passable again. And I think the staffing issue, I think it's a combination of the staffing issue with the increased pressure and traffic on those roads that are in the sparsely populated or unpopulated, completely unpopulated places that are used more for recreational or mining claim access. So it's a real thing. I'm not implying, nor do I think George's question is implying that it's your fault or anybody else's fault. It's a higher population recreating in the area, and and a much bigger problem finding enough staff to keep up with it, and the cost involved with that. And I think still finding out what the status is to see if there are any solutions to maybe a couple of those different roads. And some people will argue that letting them deteriorate might be the best thing we can do right now, except what it does is it relegates them to pretty much the monster rock crawlers. That's about all I can get up there anymore. And then they deteriorate even faster when they get those kind of play toys on it. So.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't meant as a counter argument as much as it is just it's the reality of the situation that we're dealing with. I guess the only other thing I would say is I mean, we'll try and get you the data that you're asking for. You know, our public works director, rather than being in this office and being able to pull data like that, is working at the transfer station when the winter was behind it, driving a snowplow, right? So that's the magnitude of the situation, so.
Good.
Can someone help me understand non-maintained roads? Does that include named roads that happen to be?
Yeah,
Maintained road, received a great deal of road days years ago. And it's in much better shape as 20 years ago. So I don't know if the county still does that, but maybe that's something that our homeowners and residents need to do, is take care of the non-maintained roads themselves.
you know, and Commissioner Marlin's referring to a program we used to have where we would deliver material to
Yeah.
some of these non-maintained roads that they then had to
Do the work.
do the work, but we
Yeah.
just, that's,
So that doesn't happen anymore.
it does not.
Okay.
That was not, that was part of some budget cuts before
Sure.
the tax. And right now we don't have capacity to be able to
Okay.
to provide that kind of a program at this point until we can get staffed up.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the expectations management. Really grateful to our team. I think the top priority should be being an equipment on the roads, not doing math problems in your office. And so like, these are the things I'm curious about, and I totally understand that it's gonna take some time. I'm hopeful that, a Matt Taylor might have access to some of this data.
Had the same thought.
And like a specific thing is there's so many non-maintained roads that don't have homes on them. And I think that's a different situation. If we could understand the non-maintained roads that have homes on them and like the scale of that issue. And then just the last thing I say, I'm talking too long, is the long view of the history is that at one point we had a road and bridge department that was flush enough to maintain North Empire all the way out to what is that? What is the name of that lake out there, Andy? Billmore.
Billmore Lake, and it was we contend that it's a county road all the way to Billmore Lake legally. That's only because I believe our road and bridge and one of the county commissioners used to make sure that was kept passable all the way to Billmore Lake because he liked to fish there. And as a result, because we were maintaining it, we got to claim it in our HUTF formula. The U.S. Forest Service, who owns the land into which that road penetrates deeply, differs greatly in the opinion of whose road it is. They believe they own it, and we don't really contest their operational ownership of it, but we haven't given it up legally.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was referring to. Just that there's a history of work. Those culverts were installed by somebody. I'd like to know the story. Next, we got a letter from Signal Behavioral Health. Signal Behavioral Health is the MSO. I think they're the MSO for our region. They are applying to be the BOCC, the BHASO, Behavioral Health Administrative Service Organization, something like that. Anyway, these BOCCs are going to control all the contracting for the behavioral health providers in Clear Creek County and in our region. Signal Behavioral Health is one of the applicants. The RFP, the state has an RFP that's out. Signal Behavioral Health is one of the applicants. My understanding is that there are several other applicants that all are very common in that they are national managed care organizations. Signal is a local organization that when in 2019, when the bill passed that created the BHA, there was a lot of speculation that these MSOs would be most well-placed to become the BOCCs. There's a letter that is in, I know that I sent it to Brian. Brian, I hope you can get it to Sean. Sorry, guys. Your name is Mitch.
Yes.
And Randy. And just get a quick agenda item at the next meeting for us to discuss. The ask is for a letter of support.
Deadline is before the next meeting agenda.
Oh, the deadline is before the next agenda.
Pretty sure I read that.
Wow, thank you for reading that. For some reason, I thought that this RFP was out until July, but, well, in that case,
Let's discuss both options.
I'm like,
We can add it to the agenda if we have that time. If we don't, I'm looking at the attorney. Or how we agree to a letter.
I think we could offer direction to staff in this setting to write a letter of support. I haven't looked super carefully at this issue. What I know is that Jefferson County has Tracy Kraft Tharp on their board. Longtime behavioral health professional, knows the situation really well. She's recommending that we send this letter of support. Jefferson County did. The Jefferson Center for Mental Health is recommending Signal. And it seems like the choice is between an organization that knows us, knows the work, knows the state, and a for-profit, very large organization that I always think about when I need to get something from American Airlines, right? Like I need to get a ticket changed, and I wonder if I want to interact with those companies. So that's my pitch. I would support this today. I would support this later.
I'd like to read the letter. I have no qualms having staff do a response.
Okay, all right. All right, we'll get it done, whether it's on the next agenda or beforehand.
Or with your name on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Randy, any other thoughts from you on that?
No.
Okay. Next, this is just an ask for a future work session about JeffCom, about our dispatch program. It's been 4 months since the transition. I ask pretty regularly of our first responders how the transition's going. I hear that it's going well. There's also some chatter out there about people having less than awesome experiences when they call 911. And so what I've asked those individuals to do is provide like date, time, here's the call. And I want to ask JeffCom just to look into those calls and tell us what happened. I also want to ask them just to come and talk to us about how this transition has been going. I think it's time for the board to have a work session on that.
Ask who?
JeffCom.
Jeff comment at the work session. Address the board?
I think so. I mean, well, let's benefit from the wisdom of the others in the room. I think it's time for the board to check in on it. Who are the right people to be there?
Sheriff. I mean, we can certainly ask for a representative from JeffCom.
Opinions?
I wonder, I guess I would ask the sheriff, also ask the sheriff what his thoughts are in terms of who
Yeah.
should be there. I could certainly reach out to him.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have to dictate who the presenter is. What I'd like to see is some kind of a case study of some of these calls that have been identified, some data on how it's going. And you know, reports from our first responders, how they feel it's going. Long ones, thick. I'm looking at Aaron Crowley. So that's that. Next one, very similar request regarding C-chats. My understanding is that the team is back up and taking calls, and I know when it first kicked off, we said we'd like very regular updates to monitor the progress of this. So I'm just gonna ask for an update.
We're gonna give you one in 1 minute.
In 1 minute, is that why you're here?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay.
How did I know that you were gonna ask for that?
Almost like you got a heads up. I think that's my update. Next on the agenda, county manager updates, Brian.
Elizabeth to come up, but real quick, George, you mentioned this at the last meeting, but your legislative priorities are due to CCI. I think it's July 12th or 14th, so we'll put that on the July 2nd. Either the 18th or either one of our next 2 meetings that could be put on.
Can we do a work session on the 18th? And
Yes,
I'll do as much as I can to get us some
I
comments.
won't be here on that date. I'm on vacation starting next week, Thursday the 13th through the following week, the 21st. I'm trying to keep that agenda a little bit light, but yes, we can definitely add the legislation, add that to the.
Okay, just you guys, so you know, you're gonna see some kind of a county revenue diversification concept. We brought one every year.
Yeah.
You'll see something like that come from me.
I sent all three of you an email about the balancing act software that came up in our last meeting. Just so hoping you guys can take a look at that and let me know your thoughts. Again, ignore the numbers. Numbers are made up. It's just more of a to see, for you to see how it can be used. Just a heads up, our next mayors and commissioners meeting is next Tuesday at Marion's. And that's it. And I asked Aaron and Elizabeth to come, wanted to introduce Elizabeth, our new chat director, to the three of you, but just to kind of give you just a very brief where we're at. I know we're having another collision, so I'm gonna turn it over to them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm Elizabeth Gallagher. I am the new chat director. I've been on since maybe just right to the end of February is when I started. We went live again with chat, second week of April as primarily co-responding. So part of my background and my history is with co-responding. And of course, being the only person at that point, co-responding was the most obvious way to kind of get going again. Since then, we have hired another clinician. This is just her second week, so she hasn't gotten completely up to speed. With the way that, I guess with my history of co-responding, and really what I've kind of assessed the needs in this community, we are gonna kind of expand the functions of chat. So primarily, previously, it was an alternative response model. So taking those calls away from emergency services so that they didn't have to respond and just a mental health and community paramedic could respond. Adding co-responding to that means that on the calls that emergency services do have to respond to, you're still going to get a behavioral health expert, mental health expert on those calls to provide that support to, I call it kind of have an umbrella term for who we serve, and that's vulnerable populations. So mental and behavioral health, elderly, at-risk adults, at-risk juveniles, homeless populations, all those folks that are just more vulnerable in our community, and rely on emergency services more than others who aren't as vulnerable do. So my goal, I guess, my hope, my expectation is that by the end of the summer, we should have 7-day-a-week co-response coverage with the chat team. And we'll have 5-day-a-week alternate response coverage and 4-day-a-week CIHCS, which is that medical piece where we're able to provide with the community paramedics some more in-home care, kind of med management, that kind of thing to help the people who need access to medical care, and it's very difficult up here. So that's my goal by the end of the summer. So far, we have had 34 referrals, kind of active calls where I've been out either working with people on the phone after the fact or live on scene, you know, when law enforcement or emergency services are there with them. 18 of those were in April, 16 in May. I think I've heard May is kind of, there's this period in May where everything slows down. And so I think that explains why only 16 in May. But yeah, we're rolling. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mitch, Randy? I wouldn't expect you to answer this today. The thing I'm curious about moving forward is not just like the outcome data on scene, but afterwards, like what does that follow-up look like? Are we getting people to services? I know a lot of times those services just aren't there, but
Yep.
always trying to think about what's the next problem downstream
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
upstream or however you want.
Absolutely. So, and I don't have, you know, numbers to share with you now, but I do keep track of sort of an initial contact versus a subsequent contact, right? Either they've had an additional emergency service calls, or I'm just doing that work after the fact to get them connected to those services. And we are also tracking, we have the ability to track kind of like what kinds of services are we connecting them to. And I'm also tracking kind of what the vulnerability was for that person. Somebody might have more than one vulnerability, but I think that gives an interesting kind of view into what, is it more on the elderly at-risk adult piece, or is it really on the mental health piece? And just to be able to see those numbers can be helpful to see. So I don't have a like solid, these are the reports everybody's getting every month or whatever. Obviously, if you have certain things that you want to be tracked, now's the time so that we can make sure that I can track those. But I am trying to keep track of those things, right? Ultimately, you want to see a reduction in that reliance on emergency services for non-emergency matters. And so over time, I hope to be able to show that.
Well, that addresses my question because I was curious how you were going to go about measuring impact over time.
Yeah, and I think what I've seen in my experience outside of Clear Creek County is that sometimes you see more contacts initially, and then over time they taper off. And I, anecdotally could share a few different stories from other places around where I was having multiple contacts in a week with somebody who really needed to be connected to services, stabilized in a mental health capacity. And then 6 months later, they're just continuously doing great, and I'm not hearing from them in emergency services, and I'm not hearing from them. So hope to show that impact here too, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I feel bad. It's been since February. I feel like it was yesterday.
I know, time flew.
We've been meaning to get her in to introduce her to all of you, and that was the
Right.
purpose this morning. I didn't know you were gonna bring that up.
Yeah,
I think we allow them to get these new staff on board and
yeah,
get out there and collect some data and then come back with a work session to better help you understand what the impact is.
Yeah, definitely not a complaint. Really grateful for the work. How are things going with the community advisory team?
We were waiting to reach out to them. We were waiting for Elizabeth to meet the BOCC first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next step is reaching out to the resource committee.
Okay.
And then we just got the contract back from GROC for the other 2 FTEs. We actually already have a community paramedic interview scheduled for Thursday, and maybe 2. And then is the other position, is it open?
yeah. No, not yet.
Okay, so we'll get that open this week, and fingers crossed we'll have all 4 FTEs filled really soon.
Awesome. I will share, I've met you before because you presented at the opioid conference that the GROC hosted. Just want the public to know that it was like your second day.
It was.
You represented us really well. I mean, it even seemed like you knew not just what you were talking about with respect to the work, which you've been doing for a long time, but it seemed like you knew us. So
Yeah.
really good job. We got a lot of confidence in you. I don't know how we continue to find excellent staff, but compliments to our team that finds these people.
Thanks.
That's all for me.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for me.
Okay. Communications update, Megan Heiler.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. I just wanted to update all my newsletter subscribers. I know it's been a while since my last newsletter, but things got kind of crazy. So we're doing kind of a revamped newsletter, and that's hopefully going to come out within the next week. We're probably going to do it seasonally now. Just kind of got to be too heavy of a lift to do 12 pages every month. But that being said, if you want to subscribe, you can just email me at mheiler@clearcreekcounty.us. And like I said, hopefully that'll come out in the next week or so. That's all I have.
I had a constituent yesterday ask me if it was possible to post like a 2-sentence summary of every agenda item, like in the comments on the Facebook video or something. So that is a seed that was planted with me that I'm planting with you.
Okay, I've actually talked to Brian about this before. I've seen like Summit County, they'll do like updates after each board meeting about like important things that residents need to know. So I could do something like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We are moving into our action session portion of the meeting. Put your seatbelts on. We're now sitting as the local liquor licensing authority. This is a public hearing and formal action on consideration of approval of a special event permit for Team Evergreen, Peter Lichtman.
So this is a public hearing, as you indicated. Staff has sent out requests to all the stakeholder agencies, referral agencies, and we have no concerns based on the responses. We recommend approval of this special event permit. If there is any public comment, I defer to you to call for that.
Okay, colleagues, would you like to ask questions before or after public comment?
After.
I'm going to open it up for public comment. Does anyone have any comments? You're on Zoom, quick raise hand. Just leave that open for 20 seconds while you scramble to find that button. Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Peter, any additional words or questions from my colleagues?
I would add Team Evergreen's a good community partner. They do lots of good things in the community.
Same. They've had a really good record in the past with us running several events. I mean, you never get through anything as complicated as some of the big things they've taken on, like the what now will be eventually the Mount Blue Sky Hill climb and things like that. They've handled some pretty big stuff for us in the past when they've taken it on, absorbed it, and they've been and they raise enough money that they're able to contribute to things outside of their own interest area, which is cycling. So I'm completely in support of it. And it looks like we have staff recommendation for approval.
We do. Okay, I see that this is an administrative item. I think what that means is that I say this is approved.
That
For
is
staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we have made our way to the consent agenda. Anybody want to strike anything from the consent agenda?
Updated agenda. We did remove item C.
I will not read item C. I'm gonna go ahead and read this. Item A, consideration of approval of warrant register. Item B, consideration of approval of intergovernmental agreement between the County of Clear Creek and the County of Grand for ambulance loaning. Skipping item C, item D, consideration of approval of emergency medical services mutual aid agreement between Clear Creek County on behalf of Clear Creek Emergency Medical Services, Grand County, and Grand County Emergency Medical Services. Item E, consideration of approval of I-70 automatic and mutual aid agreement between Clear Creek County and Evergreen Fire Protection District for auto response into service areas. Item F, consideration of approval of memorandum of understanding with Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment regarding STD testing. Item G, consideration of approval of a statewide internet portal authority grant application for funding through Gov Grants program to support ADA compliance on the county website. Well, I hear a motion to
Yep,
approve. the
I'd like
consent
to move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, discussion? I just like to highlight to the public the things that are on this consent agenda. So much stuff just shows up on this consent agenda, but it's good work and it is worthy of being highlighted. We're deepening the relationship with Grand County around ambulance loaning and mutual aid. I think that's really important. We're working with CDPHE regarding STD testing. There's really a problem with STDs in the state of Colorado, and we're getting some extra funding to be able to do that testing. So hats off to our public health team. And then lastly, hats off to Rebecca Abrahamson, who continues to pay for her job better than anybody else on this team. For getting a SIPA grant so that we can work on ADA compliance with our website. I just like to highlight the good work that's being done in these agenda items. Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda passes. Next on the agenda, we have abatement hearings with Assessor G. Come on up. And we have several hearings. If you're logged into Zoom, find that raise hand button so that when we get to your case, you can get your hand up and join us.
Just note, Donna, Wendy Anderson's here from Nice Lawn Anderson. If you wanted to start with her, it's up to you.
I'm fine with that.
I think we should. Is this the nice little the Anderson application?
Yes. Excellent, Anderson and Spruance.
It's 24-42.
Are we finding our way through the packet and everything okay, colleagues?
I'm on the page.
Good.
Okay.
This packet actually looks really well organized. Thank you.
So
Welcome.
I just want to say the same thing. Donna, I really want to compliment you on the orderly way and the accessible way that this is put together, especially in the HTML format. We're really able to jump straight in rather than, having to, anyway, let me just say that it's a job very well done. I want to really show appreciation for your progress and growth in this position. It's tremendous.
Thank you, commissioners. Okay, so the first one we have is Neeson and Anderson. And this one, the assessor is recommending approval for 22 and 23. And for a little background, the assessor does reassessment every 2 years. And for 23 taxes due in 24 and 24 due in 25, we looked at sales that occurred July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022. On this case, the land was split. And when it was split in 2022, it did not get removed from the first account. So the first account value will say the land was $10,000. So 5,000 should have remained in that account for the land. 5,000 should have transferred to the new account, and it did not. So we need to adjust the land accordingly to what the value should have been for those 2 periods. We have for 2022, a value of $162,900, recommending a adjusted value of $161,450. And then for 2023, we had an actual value of $208,700. The recommended value is $198,700.
Thank you. Comments from our applicant?
No, I really don't. It's all right there as far as we were paying double on one building. For 2
Absolutely.
years. Yeah, on the land, correct.
But it was added to the other parcel, correct?
It was added to the other parcel, so it made it double taxed. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it, huh?
So are we adjusting both
Right.
parcels down to 5,000 or one of the?
One of them was correct.
One of them was correct. Okay.
Correct. Yes, that money did get transferred. It was double taxed in the first account.
That's my only question.
So how does that work? Does that? You get a refund of taxes?
Any questions, Randy, Mitch, or maybe a motion?
No.
So Carol, be in touch with me on that. Okay. Have a good day.
I was just looking for the number.
Yeah.
I'd like to move that we accept the assessor's motion for 24-42, or recommendation rather.
Do I hear a second?
I see him.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And next, are we moving to 2443? And inviting Wendy back up?
Or 2437 is first.
Megan, is anybody online? Like the last names I have are Enix or Oland or another Anderson.
No, most people online are employees or they don't have a last name. So
Want to see the list name?
Oh, yeah,
I think
thanks, Tom.
let's just start at the top of the list, 2437.
And that's Annex?
Yep.
John,
Uh-huh.
no. Not seeing anybody with that last name or first name.
That's okay. We can, go ahead and proceed.
Yep, for Mr. Annex's accounts, they were, again, we do the reassessment every 2 years, so the sales for 23 and 24 were based on sales that occurred July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2022. He is requesting an abatement for 2023. The assessor is recommending denial on both accounts. The property owner purchased both properties on October 31st, 2023, which is outside the assessment period. So we did run comparable sales, which we are required to do by statute. So when we ran the comparable sales, they were right in line with what they should be. His value currently on account number R007042, the value is 54,820. First comparable was 89,870. Second sale was 89,870. The third sale was 41,760. So it's right in line with what we're seeing for the sales during that period. They were private sales, if I may note that, because we do use qualified arm length transactions for sales. And they were private, so it's requesting a denial on those both properties.
And that's because sales that are not arm's length can't be used.
That's correct.
I could decide to sell to my niece my home for $1.
Mhm.
We would want to tax my niece at the actual value of my home.
That's correct, based on the sales that occurred during that period. And it is right in line with the value. Both of them are very similar.
Questions, comments?
No questions?
I agree with the assessor on this one. And welcome a motion for denial if that's where it is leaning.
Sorry, and there's no comment from anybody? Just want to confirm
Not
again.
online.
Nobody and no member of the public wishes. to-
John?
Petitioner is not present. Do we open public comment for this?
I do for hearings.
Oh, well,
I recommend it.
any public comment? I guess especially if we're gonna deny.
Yeah, and there's nobody by that name online, so.
Okay, not hearing any public comment. I'm gonna close public comment. Sounds like denying this per the assessor's recommendation. I'll go for a motion.
We accept the assessor's recommendation for 24-37 and deny.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next one on this case is Joustin, and she called me. They do not know how to use Zoom, so she asked if we can conference her in.
Oh, like phone number wise?
Yes,
Shall we get her the phone number and then move to the next case? Or is,
I can give you the phone number here and we can move to the next case. That's fine.
I mean, if she can pick up, we can just,
Yeah, I think we can just give her a call.
You have to 9 for the outside line.
Is that right? Okay. And this is her.
Correct.
Mr.
Your call
Chair.
cannot be completed at this time. Please.
Perfect. Let's try it without 9, maybe? Sorry.
Might be easier just drop it on a cell on speaker.
Mr. Chair, while I'm looking, I miss. As I'm looking at this, I realize. Apologies.
I'm always happy to include the public.
Good morning.
Hi there.
Amalita.
Hi there. This is Megan from Clear Creek County. Can you hear me? Oh. Hi there. This is Megan from Clear Creek County. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good
Awesome.
morning.
Good morning. We are doing abatement hearings and you are up. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm Amalita Justin and my husband and my son own the property up in Clear Creek. Thank you for hearing our abatement issue. We sent a letter and many documents to show you, but just so you know, the price history, we purchased and the land was sold to us at 30,000 at the end of last year. Over a decade, it has not sold more than 45,000 over the last 10 years. The price is dropping, obviously, because we got it for 30, which is a good deal for us, I guess. The land itself, 90% of it is covered, of the flat area is covered by slag. And that would be buildable. However, there's a high cost to remove the slag, and to complete the reclamation portion is required if you move the slag or you remove the slag. And so that's a negative for us to try to build anything. The swamp area where the river or stream is, that area is approximately 15% of the land. And so obviously you can't build where when it snows, it gets out of the banks of the land. And so you have to be, there's not very many spots to build. The road that goes through our land covers about 5 to 10%. And actually the road separates our land from the south part of it. And that south part is unbuildable because we did talk to the county, and as per the county code for septic, they said we could not do anything there. And then much of the land is heavily sloped on the sides. And so from the sloping section, obviously you can't do anything because the road is above us and comes around and goes back through the land in 3 different areas.
Thank you.
And then the rest of everything we put into a letter and that. So
Thank you. And we're in receipt of your letter. Assessor G, what would you add to this? What would you share?
Thank you. So the assessor's office does reassessment every 2 years. The 23 and 24 values were set by sales that occurred July 1st, 2020 through July 30th, 2022. So we're 2 years in arrears. The purchase did occur 10/4/23 for $30,000 outside the assessment rate. According to statute, we do have to run comparable sales. We did run comparable sales, and we did see that it was high valued for that period of time. So when we looked at the value that you currently have assessed for the July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022, the value that was set is $81,400, which is being contested. So we ran 3 comparable sales to tighten up that sales after we did our reassessment. And our first comparable came in at $65,890. The second sale came in at $81,940. The third sale came in at $97,780. So looking at those comparable sales and the adjustments that were made to bring them comparable to you, we can recommend an adjustment down to $65,890, partially approving the request. And then you'll see the benefit of the sale price you paid in the next assessment period.
I understand that, and while I appreciate that you're at least looking at that it wasn't 81,000. I don't know what the other lands were, but if you looked at the mapping and everything, this property is definitely not something that is buildable or useful at this point in time without a heavy expenditure. And so I understand that those are comparable sales, but I don't know that those are comparable lands.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know if they have edifices on them or whatever, but
We do compare by characteristics. So we do have your location as fair ratings. The other ones that we used were fair. One of them was a poor location, so even worse than your property was. We also have your property topography, the front as steep, the mid as sloping, and the back as steep, trying to use similar sales on those as well. So the topography was similar as well. Now, we don't value based on what might be stored on the property. If it's like the picture that you submitted, we can see that there's gravel and so forth. That doesn't go into consideration for our
Yeah.
assessment, unfortunately.
Well, it's basically mining property and it's slag. And with slag, what we were told by the county where it's the mining is that we cannot move any. If we move anything, then it has to be reclaimed. And so in order to build or do anything, you would have to move it. And the reclamation process, whether or not you move it or remove it, becomes very, very expensive. There is no electricity to the property at this point in time or anything like that.
Right.
Okay, thank you for the information to the applicant and the assessor. Board, questions?
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm asking the board if they have questions or thoughts.
Okay, sorry.
I accept the recommendation.
I don't want to quibble too much over this. Donna, I note that the adjusted sale that you're selecting is the lowest adjusted sale of the, am I counting correctly that there are 6 comparables here?
3, we typically use 3
Oh, that second page.
is. And let me take a double check on that. Oh, no, we have 6 on this one.
And of the 6 comparables, you're choosing the
The
lowest
lowest, yeah.
value.
Mhm.
If I was to average these, I see one adjusted sale value of 112,000.
Yeah.
If I was to average these, I think I'd come up with a different number. So can you explain the logic around picking the lowest adjustable sale?
Okay, so we want to try to tighten in our comparables. So when we're looking at our comparables, we're looking at properties that are very similar, maybe fair location, steep topography, one that has the least adjustments, because that property is pretty comparable. These are all mining claims as well. So they are the same types of properties. Some just require more adjustments. And we don't want to take into consideration those adjustments. We want the least adjustments, the most comparable property for what it's sold for.
Thank you. And I do note that that is a $3,800 adjustment, and some of these other adjustments are in the $45,000 range. Other thoughts?
No,
Okay. I'm good with the assessor's recommendation. Thank you for explaining yourself.
You're welcome.
yes, you do. I'd like to move that we accept the assessors.
Very much for hearing our claim.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, ma'am. Mitch, you were making a motion?
Yes,
Thank you so much.
I move that we
Okay.
accept the assessor's recommendation for 24-39.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you, Melita.
Oh, thank you so much for hearing our claim. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Carol. Bye.
Next, 2441 Oland.
Do we have Chris online or anything?
What's his last name?
Oland?
OELAND. First name Chris.
If you are online, you probably want to raise your hand whenever is convenient. So just so we know you're here. Otherwise, we're just going to move in the order.
Yep. I'm not seeing a Chris or somebody with last name Olin.
Let's proceed.
This is a request for an abatement for 23 and 24. Again, those 23 and 24 are based on sales that occurred July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022. This was purchased out of the assessment period at March 24th, 2023. It was purchased for the $30,000 or $18,000 as he indicated, $18,500. But again, it's out of the assessment period, so we have to run comparables on it. We currently have a value of $78,390. We do have it as sloping steep. It does have public water. So we did run comparable sales using that characteristics. First one was 73,820. The second comparable was 83,640. Third was 74,500. Fifth was 78,230, and the final one was 86,340 for values for sales. Now we are seeing a huge increase in sales going up in St. Mary's. There was no transfer declaration with this to even know if this was on open market or not, so we couldn't take that into consideration, but it is out of the assessment period. And he would see the benefit of the price going down in the next assessment period.
Assuming that's where the market goes.
That's where, well, he's a sale, so you want to keep your sale in line.
Well, and assuming that's an arm's length transaction, sounds like maybe.
Correct.
Questions?
I see, as I'm looking at the black and white high contrast graphic of the map, do I presume that spot on the upper left-hand corner of the property is a sewer manhole to which you refer?
That is correct.
Okay, and so therefore that is on the downhill side of the property.
That is
And
correct.
That is a viable sewer access for that property.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I am motivated to accept your recommendation for denial. Any others have different opinions or maybe a motion?
Same.
All right, I'd like to move that we accept the assessor's recommendation for 24-41 and
Second.
deny.
Go ahead, sorry.
I caught that second. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I'm a little confused. Did we do 42 and 43?
Just 42.
Just 42, okay. So we never know which one's the nice one, which one's the Anderson. So we're moving on to 24-43.
And that is Douglas Anderson. And he has a mining claim as well. Again, we do reassessment every 2 years, 23, 24, from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2022. The property value for 21 and 22, because he's putting on the abatement 21 and 22. For 21, it was valued at $17,150. So we didn't run comparables on the 21, 22 values. And then he mentioned up in the middle section of the abatement that he was wanting 23. So we ran it for the 23 values. And you can't abate 21 because you can only abate 2 years. You can't abate 21 anyway. So for his mining claim, we have a value of 40,530. We ran 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 comparable sales on this one. First one came in at 44,530. Second one at 55,440. Third one at 40,480. Fifth one at 40,780, or fourth one, and fifth one at 47,600. His value is in line for his mining claim, and the assessor is recommending denial.
I think I agree. Questions, comments? Randy
We
is,
verified he's not online.
and just so that people know, Randy's feeling ill. He might be kind of popping in and out, but we're just gonna proceed. And here you are, Randy. Comments?
Yes, that's just when I reach for a Kleenex, just sparing you. No comments.
Welcome to motion.
All right. I move that we accept the assessor's recommendation 4-43 and deny the application.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then 24-44, they asked to punch out to August. I think I sent you an update on.
Yes, I did.
So the last one is the 24-45.
Okay, motion passes on the
I'm sorry.
Anderson case. And we're moving on to which case? 45?
45.
This is our last one for today. This one, again, 23 and 24 values are based on sales that occurred July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022. This one, we are recommending approval because he did purchase it within our base year. So the value that we previously had on it was 2,158,980,000. He purchased the property for 1.9 million. So according to state statute, we should be bringing it down to the 1.9 million.
Questions?
No,
Opinions?
No, it's pretty cut and dried.
You're about to bat 1,000 on your recommendation. Promotion.
Well, let's overturn one of them. Just, you don't want her to get,
the best
overconfident.
documented one, maybe.
I worked really hard, Randy.
All right, I'd like to move that we accept the assessor's recommendation for 24-45 and approve.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Donna or Assessor G, thank you. It might be weird to hear commissioners waxing poetic about the construction of the packet. It really has an impact on our lives, and I'm just really grateful for the way this packet was constructed. So thank you. Beth, if you had a hand in it, thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's get to next on the agenda, consideration of approval of the Clear Creek County fiscal year 2023 audit report with Maria Ostrom.
Thank you, commissioners. We have Timothy A. Hopelto here with us, who is the managing director here for the county's audit. He is with Hinkle and Company, and I am having back trouble, so I'm not going to sit in this chair. I'm going to exchange it and get a different chair. But he does have a presentation, and we can get that going. Yep. He wants to walk you through some information here. Oh my goodness. And she'll click through for you. You just indicate when you're ready.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is Timothy Ahopelto. I'm the engagement partner for Clear Creek County's 2023 audit. And let's get started. First of all, I'd like to give you a brief outline of how things will go in this hopefully abbreviated presentation. We'll talk about the audit process and the results. There's a required audit communication, which you should have received. And then a couple of issues and improvements. I know there's going to be some transition period coming up with Maria shortly, and then wrap it up with some questions and answers for where the commissioners give me questions and hopefully I give them sufficient answers.
Yeah, thank you. And before you get started, want to make sure you're aware, this is Mitch's second meeting. Mitch knows budgets and stuff very well. I anticipate that this is a great opportunity for you to dig in and ask a lot of questions and take a lot of time. I welcome that. And there's your heads up.
We'll take all the time. Like Louis Armstrong says, we have all the time in the world. Right? Okay. Our audit process involves planning, testing, and reporting. When we get to planning, it's updating our understanding of the county's operations as well as their internal controls. The operations are programs, personnel. It's over the past 2 or 3 audits, personnel has been fairly consistent, which helps with having an experience base and a knowledge base to go off of and expand upon. We obtain and update our understanding of the county's internal controls, both from a financial statement and a compliance perspective. They primarily deal with our entity level controls, which are what's your control environment like? How do you determine what could go wrong areas, how do you communicate and inform the decision makers as far as what controls and then monitoring. And that all kind of funnels into the control activities, what you're doing with regards to detecting and preventing material misstatements or instances of noncompliance. Based on our planning, we develop an audit approach, and that audit approach involves substantive tests of details along with analytics, which are comparisons of actual results with expected results. Our substantive tests of details include balance tests, activity tests. We have some compliance tests on the single audit side. As a firm, we like to come up with compliance requirement memos. The OMB has 14 different compliance requirements, and then based on the program we select for testing in any given year, we'll prepare memos and see what kind of additional testing we need to have, send those to the finance director and the program manager, see if there's any that make sure that our understanding of the compliance requirements for a particular program are in line with what the county program manager is expecting. Based on our testing, we issue opinions, both the financial statement opinion, a generally accepted government auditing standards report, which is basically called a yellow book because they're back 40 years ago when they came out with government auditing standards. They printed it on paper and the cover was yellow, hence the term yellow book. And then we issue a single audit opinion. On the financial statements, we're happy to report your opinion was unmodified. And on the compliance report, there were no instances of material non-compliance. In fact, I don't think we had any issues with regards to compliance on the program we tested. Just a quick run through on your required audit communication. The first part of the letter deals with auditor responsibility. That's basically articulating that our responsibility is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement, and as opposed to absolute assurance. Reasonable assurance has the idea of getting to good enough. The next thing is addresses our requirements regarding independence. We were, in fact, our team and the firm as a whole met the independence requirements that basically requires us to avoid any conflicts of interest with regards to our relationship with the county versus the results that were the testing and the results of the testing that we perform. And we're happy to report there were no uncorrected or corrected misstatements as a result of our audit procedures. And we had no disagreements with management, either from a financial statement side or a compliance testing side. And we encountered no significant difficulties. In fact, Clear Creek County has become one of the easier counties for us to audit because of the high standards that Murray has set with regards to the financial side of the audit. I was driving on the way over here and I just remember, I think it was a 2020 audit that was sometime in September. You could probably attest to that as well, that we were 3 to 4 months late, and Maria's actually turned things around, develop a high expectation with regards, she helps helps drive us to get things done and work hard to get to this point where we're actually presenting and we can actually go forward with our with submitting all the audits, audit related issues, consultations with other independent accountants. That's basically a fancy way to say getting a second opinion on an accounting and auditing issue. And we're not aware of any of those types of issues during the 2023 year. In fact, there's a new gap regarding information technology agreements. And Marie and I had a
Couple hours.
couple hour discussion as to how to account for those long-term IT contracts. So it's a good exercise. I think it was a good exercise for both of us and all the financial gymnastics with regards to that. And then the county had early adopted the compensated absences, GASB. It's a GASB 101. And Maria kind of mentioned to me yesterday that was actually one of the more pleasant pronouncements as opposed to the IT agreements pronouncement. We got outcomes. We're 4 days earlier on our audit opinion than we were last year. That's a positive. And then our presentation today is kind of in the same time frame as it was last year. So, coming from 2020 to 2023, as far as the audits are concerned, there's a lot of improvement. And, when you compare 2022 to 2023, it doesn't seem like there's as much of a leap, but there is progress being made. And we as a firm I like to tell our in-charge auditors that we like to get first of all, we want to work with the county to get an expectation with regards to what the timetable is for getting to this point where we're presenting and you've got a final audit report in hand, and then kind of working back from there. But we also like to, as a general goal, kind of get things earlier and earlier. There is a point at which there's only so far back to early you can really get. But that kind of helps with the commissioners, it helps with the county as a whole, it helps with the finance department that we're not lingering on. We're keeping things moving forward. And then the finance department can get back to their regularly scheduled program, so to speak. Improvements from 2022. One of the things we noted, we're actually able to submit the single audit to the clearinghouse in a timely. We've actually had that for the past 2 years where we're able to submit the single audit to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse in a timely fashion. Basically, if you don't file on time, which means the county gets the report and either we as the auditors or the county submit to the clearinghouse within 30 calendar days of receiving the report. So we're happy to report that the county has met that for the prior 2 years. And what that does is the county has gone from a high-risk auditee to a low-risk auditee. What that means for the county and for us as auditors is our percentage of programs on the federal awards document is reduced from 40% to 20%. So it makes life a lot easier for the county and for the auditors.
Is it safe to say that cuts your workload in half?
It so single audit is federal grant money and single audit is a significant amount of work. And I wouldn't say it's in half, but it's very noticeable. It's appreciated. And I believe that possibly it cuts some audit fees a little bit too. Like your audit fees aren't as substantial when you're a low risk auditee for single audit.
Right, and I think when you go back to the 2023 audit engagement letter, it's a lot of our audit fees with regards to single audit are kind of fixed at maybe, I think it's 4,000 or 5,000.
Depending on how many programs you have to
Right.
test, yes.
And some of our audit fees on our engagements, we've had some higher ed engagements where you're gonna test one program every year, and then you're gonna test another program. So that's kind of your built-in flat fee. And then if there's, in the event you have a program or two more, there's a per program charge, but I'm not sure. I don't think I would be surprised if that was built into the county's fee structure in the engagement letter. So, yeah, I think we did another county last year, and they had 5 programs, and that was 5 programs to get them to their 20%. So this Clear Creek County had 1 program to get to their 20%, which makes it a lot easier on Maria and the program directors.
Yeah, and the program they tested commissioners was shooting range. It was that federal grant money. So.
Yep. Any questions? And I know this is for a few, this is exciting stuff. For others, it's a little dry, so to speak.
I'm curious how frequent the out of audit communications are, but between the county and your firm.
Was it maybe 2 or 3 times in a year?
Okay.
I'm curious, what do we learn from the answer to that question?
To me, it means that we have staff that wants to make sure they're doing things correctly the first time they do it. They want to make sure that when they post something, that it's gonna stand up to the audit. What does it mean to you?
That's exactly correct, Commissioner. You're right on. So you're spot on with that new gas fee related to IT, or they call it subscription agreements. There was a lot of entries that needed to be made. We had to add a liability to the books. We had to add significant footnote disclosures. So it involved, me reading through the standard, digesting it, going to a couple of trainings, there's a lot of training out there when their new standard comes out, and then putting those footnotes together, putting those entries together, posing it to him and saying, hey, can you review this, please? And then let's have a talk. Let's have a discussion about it. And let's walk through and see if I'm right or not. Because you want to get it right before they show up to do the audit and the ACFR is prepared already. You want to make sure it's right before you make those entries.
So the other thing I would pick up is if it was 3 times a month, that might be a topic for further conversation and understanding. But, 3 times a year seems totally realistic and good for us.
Can I add to that? I think one of the skill sets Maria brings to us, she does all of our financial statements for us. Then they go to the auditor. We're lucky to have that skill set in Maria. And not every finance director has that skill set where they're having to work with their auditors directly to get that done. Some of our neighbors are doing that right now. I've been asking that question as we're looking to ultimately find a new finance director.
And your northern neighbor.
Thank you. It's a good question.
And I would say there's, we've had instances with regards to like Clear Creek County where we have 2 or 3 contacts throughout the year regarding how do I implement IT, the gap for subscription agreements, and then we've had at least one instance last year where a municipality has brought a concern with regards to like a control activity that doesn't seem to be working, and how do you know, it's, if there's the point being, if there's an occasion where you need to have some additional work done or additional discussion going back and forth, we're more than happy to be responsive in those types of issues. We deal with cities, towns, counties, we've got a couple, we've actually transitioned to a couple of Oklahoma higher ed, and we've got 3 Colorado higher ed now. So we've got a various portfolio of governmental type entities where we have it's kind of surprising where you've got a firm of 15 to 20 professionals in Hinkle and Company that have a broad portfolio of governmental entities that can deal with some of these accounting type issues that come up. And, whether it's subscription based agreements or compensated absences or what have you.
Are any of our ratios trending in a direction over time that we should know about?
Maria?
Well, I'm pleased to report that your general fund losses have improved significantly over the past 3 years. Right? 3 years ago, we had a $2.7 million deficit. We ended the year 2.7 million in the hole. And this 2023, when all entries had been made and all was said and done, it was 135,000 in the hole. So that's a really significant trend in the right direction. Yeah.
I think we still have a fiscal cliff. That's the bad news. The good news is the fiscal cliff has moved several years from where it was, not away from us, which is a different way of stating what you just said, I think.
Interest earnings being the big, beyond our control component. Was it 1.2 million last year?
Significant. And I think it'll be 1 million this year. You're right, Commissioner. But I don't want to understate too how important it was what was done with benefits. Benefits here at the county were 35 to 40% of wages, and they're down to like 28 to 30 now. So it's pretty significant improvement with no cost to the employee and actually improvements for the employee.
That's kind of what you want to have.
Yes, yes.
So for the employees, it's either a lower cost or an increase in benefits because of the change. It's just better purchasing and better acquisition of the benefits, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yes.
I know we've discussed this in past meetings, and I've been holding off because questions about the audit are more relevant, but sales tax growth, 0.6%. I think we've been modeling, what have we been modeling?
5% in out years.
5%. We might need to move that down.
And we're not.
this budget year.
You're spot on, Commissioner. For the kickoff budget meeting, it is not at 5% in out years anymore. That has all been adjusted. It's inflation in out years. The 0.6%, I think I reported to the commissioners that significant slide and decrease happened in November and December. That the slide was so fast and so significant, it overtook almost near double-digit growth for the rest of the year. So we had been trending at close to 10% for most of the year. And then November and December sales trailed off so far, they dragged down all that good growth that we'd had all year. Now, what we're seeing this year so far, we only have 3 months so far, is a slight improvement. It's better than 0.6, but it's not yet hitting inflation. Inflation is trending about 3.5% right now. So we're not quite at inflation, but it's better than it was. And you're exactly right. You don't want to count on 5% because that's not looking likely.
Better to be conservative on the dollars side and
Right.
on the ends side, and really opposite of tight on the expenditure side.
Yeah, I always say it's really important to under promise and over deliver.
I mean, it's best to be really accurate, but it turns out it's a pretty complicated place.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm set.
Randy?
I just, agree with something that, Maria just said, which is to under promise and over deliver. And it's not to sandbag, but it just means just make sure that you don't exaggerate your potential and set yourself up for failure.
Mhm.
That's critical. And if you see, acknowledging the 800-pound gorillas in the distance, let's just say in the road, is really important, and then figuring out how to mitigate them before you get there. And I think you've done an excellent job of that.
Life is a lot of expectation management.
Yeah.
And we can't have a conversation about managing for the bottom line without me pointing out that there are several things that local governments do for their constituents that we are just starting to do, historically have not done. They're also going to cost money. I think our local government can do a lot better by our constituents. And I don't know where we're going to find the money to do that, but I like our constituents to be aware that we can do better on housing, we can do better on childcare, we can be more present in wildfire mitigation, behavioral health, a lot of stuff. It comes down to money.
Yep. It's really important that we do try to bring quality of life and a secure anxiety. Well, you'll never make it anxiety free. We'll find ways to be anxious, but to try to create an as anxiety free as possible an environment for our citizens. But to do that costs money, and we can't do that without making sure that we can balance the bottom line now and into the future and manage the account.
Okay, I don't have any other comments. Not seeing anything, any other comments from you? No. Okay, I would welcome a motion to accept this audit report.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good work. Thanks.
Have a great day.
Too.
I am going to announce a quick bio break. It's 10:54. We'll try to get started around 11:05 to consider approval of a subdivision improvements agreement for the development of Phase 4 Saddleback Mountain subdivision.
Nothing to show, but
Okay.
if you could please, allow Adam Springer to
Yes.
join us. I would imagine he's online and he may have some input for us. Here is a few names, Michael Lepides, I'm not sure how to pronounce his
Okay.
name. Paul Wallach or Bo King.
I'm
are
seeing a Paul, so that's,
probably safe.
okay. And then I've got two phone numbers. So if they're on the phone, I can't tell that that's them.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and Paul is representing the developer
Okay.
as well there, so he can chime in if he thinks if the rest of the team are online there
Cool.
or
I'll
on the
just
phone.
glance at that throughout here and see if they join.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so it is 11, excuse me, 11:07. We're here to consider approval of subdivision improvements agreement for the development of phase 4 of the Saddleback Mountain subdivision. We have Stoy Streepy and Adam Springer presenting.
Well, thank you, commissioners. I'm a little bit out of my element here. Adam Springer's joining us as well. He can step in where I flounder here, but this should be a pretty simple process, really. This is for the Saddleback Mountain subdivision, which was approved by Clicker County in the year 2000. Consists of a little more than 80 lots there. Has been previously developed to some extent. It was split into 4 phases. One of the phases has been completely built out with, approximately a quarter of the homes, 20 or so homes there that have been built out for one of the phases. Another phase has had all the infrastructure improvements developed for it, but has not been built out. So the lots are accessible, they have services provided, but they don't have homes yet. This is a third phase that currently does not have a road built to it. It gets access to the subdivision area through the roads that have been built in the subdivision there, but does not have access to the individual lots yet, or some of the other services that were required by the subdivision plat and will be required by the building department in order to occupy these residences and develop these residences. And the subdivision process, was a thorough process, one of the, major subdivisions that we've seen here in recent decades. And this is just the next step after the subdivision plating process. What we're asking or presenting to you today, and the developer is asking, is to build out this third phase of the lot. They want to come in, build all the infrastructure, provide services to the individual lots, and then come in and be able to have the ability to develop the individual lots with single-family residences. They approached us with their desire to do so, and me and some of the planning team have worked with them over the past months to kind of make sure that their plans for development meet all the conditions of the subdivision requirements. And also, as part of that process, we referred it out to interested agencies, other internal county departments, as well as CDOT, the school district, the metro district that provides maintenance for the roads there and within the subdivision. And then did a review of the subdivision conditions. The developer provided us with preliminary plans that were very consistent with the plans that were approved through the subdivision process, showed substantial compliance with our road standards and access standards, as well as, appeared to meet all the intentions of the conditions for the subdivision plat itself. Did not receive any comments back from the fire authority or the school district. There are some, fees associated with developing in this particular subdivision. Again, that was part of the subdivision process. Those fees are typically collected as part of the building permits and then distributed to the school district or to the fire authority or whomever it may be. Developer is completely aware of that, and that will be handled again as part of the individual building permits. The subdivision improvements agreement that I'm presenting to you today is purely an agreement that states that the developer will come in and provide all of the services and access and other infrastructure needs for these lots to be developed. And as part of that agreement, they are providing us with a financial guarantee that is based on the estimated cost of constructing these improvements. We will take that financial guarantee before we allow them to pull any actual construction permits to start work. This once if we get approval from you, the commissioners, for this subdivision improvements agreement, the next step will be to collect that financial guarantee from them, and then the developer presumably will come to us, apply for the permits to actually do the construction. Once the improvements covered in the subdivision improvements agreement are constructed, staff will go out, review the improvements, if they're acceptable and meet the approved plans and the conditions of the subdivision plat, then we'll come back and recommend that we release the funds back to the developer. And I think that's a summary there. It does look like we have Paul Wallach, who is an engineer representing the developer. Paul is a civil engineer that has been involved in the plan development, construction plan development for the subdivision, as well as kind of representing the developer's interest for this. So that they may want to say some words if you'd like to allow them to do so. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Let's go ahead and let's hear what the developer would add. They may answer some of our questions for us.
Hi, I'm Paul, in my car, but appreciate you taking the time for us. And yes, Stoy hit it pretty much right on. We going with the original approved plans, haven't changed them what was approved. We've talked to the Metro District about their big concern was how we were going to route the traffic, the haul. And the owner, Michael Lapidus, who I believe might be on the call, he was going to try to be on, but he's been talking to Tarley, a lot of correspondence with him and our contractor to make sure everyone's happy with how we're going to take care of the roads. That was our big concern. Steve Grapes is with Black Diamond Excavating is our contractor, and he's well aware of that area and the route to go, and even keeping the roads clean and up to the standards that the county wants to see. So other than that, we're just going to do the road up to the top there with those lots. We'll get going on the first 3 lots right away with the building permits. We'll get those submitted in so we can get some spec homes going immediately. So as soon as we get this approval, the owners will pay the fees, and we hope to begin construction pretty much as soon as we can get those final permits approved, which should be soon. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you for that, Paul. And if I may continue just a little bit, and I'd like to give Adam a chance to chime in if he has anything that I missed there as well. But I did want to comment, appreciate Paul bringing up the Metro District there, because they did provide an fairly extensive response to our referral request. There was several different items. A lot of it is centered around the development process and how, as Paul said, traffic would be routed, how we can provide for protection for the existing road system, and some other things. And then some stuff in here that was a little bit unrelated to this new development, as far as, who is, accepting the roads for road maintenance and that sort of thing. But a lot of it was really about development standards, which we did, go through extensively during the subdivision process, still consistent with today's road standards there, which we would apply to this project for construction processes as well as design standards. And then Adam, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Stoy. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all your hard work on this. The only thing I'll kind of add, I think you kind of hit everything. It's just the bigger picture of kind of how this works. We haven't seen this in a while to where we've done anything like this. Like Stoy said, this was approved in 2000. We really haven't had a large subdivision, since that time for the most part. So, what happens is, this first step with the subdivision improvement agreement, again, the subdivision was already approved, and, presumably then they complete the improvements, and then we issue what's called a certificate of compliance, and that comes before the BOCC as well. And then this eventually lets us release that letter of credit. And there may be some tiered releases just depending on how they decide to do that. That's kind of all I have to add, and I'll just kind of just let Stoy know I really appreciate. I know this was an effort that Fred and both Stoy were working on, and then Fred's departure, Stoy kind of took this on. So thank you very much for all your hard work on this, Stoy.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues?
I remember a requirement for a new cistern as part of this modification. Is it a requirement that the cistern be put into service or just built?
It's a requirement that it be accepted by the fire authority. And that was in response to the fire responses from the fire authority during the original subdivision process. And the same plans with this one additional cistern to serve this particular phase. We didn't receive any additional comments, so we assume that that's still acceptable to the fire authority. But yeah, I would assume that it is required to be serviceable before we would be able to provide that certificate of compliance.
Thanks.
Randy, anything from you?
I think, I mean, basically what I'm seeing is a pretty professional looking, submittal and approval from staff. And I was, scrolling down a little bit ago and looking through, you know, just their estimate forms and stuff like that. And, it looks like pretty professional stuff to me. And otherwise that would be like digging into the estimate to see if Paul got something wrong. And I'm not going to bother with that. I'll find out he's right and I'm wrong anyway. So.
Okay, I have some comments / questions. First, I hesitate to assume that a lack of a response from our fire department is like silence is not always consent. And as a member of that board, I encourage the fire department to be responsive to these kinds of referrals. As a member of this board, I often delay approval of agreements until we do know their opinion. And so I'm just gonna let that element of this, well, Brian, go ahead.
I just looking at Stoy here in terms of what our experience has been over the years in terms of getting a response.
Yeah, it has lacked in the past where we have often don't get a response, and in previous cases, not so much with some of the cases I presented to this board, because that has been the direction that we've got from this board, that you do value that response from the fire authority and would like to receive that from them. That being said, in this particular case, our existing fire chief for the fire authority that serves this area provided the original responses on this subdivision. And so the previous board at that time did at least get a response, and staff got that response then and incorporated it into the subdivision itself. And this subdivision improvements agreement does not provide for any changes to that subdivision requirements. It's solely to ensure that the developer provides for these conditions that have already been put in place.
And we don't have legal grounds to adopt new requirements anyway, correct?
Nothing that is inconsistent with the original service plan.
So say over the last 25 years, our approach to fire science has changed and we have a different treatment that we think is wise. We don't have any authority to compel that.
So realistically, you can negotiate in an agreement additional things as long as it's not inconsistent with the original service plan. If the service plan were, for example, to specify a particular way of addressing it, then you'd have to modify the service plan, but it doesn't.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Hey, George, I do have Jeremy Jones online, if you're interested. You mentioned
I mean, if
fire.
the fire authority is prepared to offer comment, I would welcome that.
Let me just see if he wants to be a panelist. Yes. Give him just a second.
Jeremy, hello. Thoughts on this application?
So yeah, the original plan for cisterns for that development, this for the phase 3 of the Saddleback development, are still exactly unchanged. because it's all based off the square footage and the density of the homes that tend to be built as they were platted. So that hasn't changed, and looking at the plan review, it's the same. So we have no objections to moving forward with this as laid out with the one additional cistern up top, because it does meet the standards. That's the one thing that hasn't changed, is the square footage standards and water availability for developments is remarkably unchanged in the last like 40 years, while everything else around it has changed as far as how much defensible space they have to do. But even that still actually stands as outlined in the original document.
Okay, similar perspective on I'm gonna try to get the term right. It's a wildfire attack plan or something that maybe was specific to this project, but it was produced by the U.S. Forest Service or the State Forest Service.
Yeah, there's a wildland attack plan associated with this project, along with the extra access road that was included that goes into Beaver Brook. That was all part of that ability to operate in a wildland urban interface type fire environment as part of the original development, and that all remains in place and is in actually good condition.
So I've got a question, if I could, and thanks for coming on, Jeremy. I appreciate your jumping in here to resolve that problem for us that we just hadn't had a response yet. I appreciate your coming in. So it's the only thing that kind of, well, first of all, let me ask, so it sounds like, in your opinion, this plan complies with all modern standards that are in place today, those that have been revised regarding defensible space and so forth. There is one cistern that has been added, as I understand, or expanded, but that generally the requirements for water versus the square footage of houses to protect has remained unchanged for around 40 years. I'm not quite sure how to process that one. Obviously, everything else has changed in 40 years. But I mean, things have changed and some of the conditions and the threat has changed. So can you just address that for a moment?
So when we calculate water flow requirements or water availability for homes, it's total square footage of the home and divide that by 3. That's how you determine necessary fire flow, and you take necessary fire flow times 2 hours, and that's why we have 25,000 gallon cisterns within that neighborhood.
Okay.
I don't think I won't say that the current standards for mitigation that we have in place at the county meet the current science in any way, shape, or form. But at the time of the application, which is now, what the county has in place is all that can be enforced. And that's the defensible space calculation sheet that they have to comply with. So until we make a change in the future, this particular application does meet the standards as outlined.
Well, and I'm not suggesting that we require something that we're not legally entitled to require. Right. I will say that we had an application in the town of Empire recently when we were talking about building codes, getting away from fire, but just as a general concept. And the town of Empire has not revised its building code, but when the builders learned that the 2021 building code had just been adopted by the county, they said, then we will design to the 2021 building code, knowing that they've got a kind of well, I'll call it an ethical obligation to, if not a legal obligation, to provide life, health, and safety as best we understand it today, in anticipation of the fact that, in that case, in anticipation of the fact that the town of Empire is going to be changing their building code to match ours. That became, or I would expect they would and hope they will. That seemed to become apparent to them at the time. So I just wanted to throw that into the conversation. If there's something out there that you feel would help bring this subdivision into the 21st century, we'd certainly like the developers to understand that and have that advice from you.
No, if you look at the 2021 building code, it does have some different requirements. For example, if their buildings are for some reason less than 10 feet apart, which is, you have to have rated walls on the exterior, which is a change from the 2015 and 2018 building codes. So all the new construction will have to meet the 2021 standards because those are adopted by the county. So that also helps us with the design of the buildings and how they're constructed. Then you add sprinklers to buildings above the 4,400 square feet, the minimum requirements, and then they have to be sprinklered, which also adds a level of safety. And that's all in basically in compliance with what's currently been adopted, which is the 2021 IBC and the associated changes with that. So I think we get some inherent safety improvements compared to when the development was originally platted and built, just through the IBC adoption process itself.
Yeah, and I was not referring to, I understood that since the building permits have not been drawn, the buildings haven't been drawn for the subdivision yet. So obviously they're not applying for building permits at this time. And since we've adopted the 21 code, it's understood that we'll be building to the 21 code. My thought was a little more so on the infrastructure side, the stuff that's being decided today, that if there's anything that is, if you recognize that there is something that is defective or woefully behind the times in our infrastructure requirements for fire protection today, that would impact this and make a change, some kind of a change in terms of, you know, cistern capacity or anything like that. If there's anything like that that's out there, I just think it would be good for the owners and for us, the developers, and for us to know that. It's not building code stuff, but just in that same spirit, so that they can contemplate and possibly consider doing some things that would make sure that we're doing a 21st century development.
No, I think we're good in that. We're very fortunate with the phase 1 and phase 2 of that development. The cisterns that were put in there are not quite oversized, but they're to a certain degree oversized for total water need for the community. And due to location, phase 3 is yes above it. It's adjacent to phase 1, phase 2, but it's a cumulative amount of water within the neighborhood itself overall. And that also helps us with meeting the standards as far as water availability, distance to water, secondary water sources, which the phase 1 and phase 2 cisterns become secondary water sources for the phase 3 development. So it essentially builds on itself in a positive way. And this is one of the few developments that has done a very good job of building capacity within their development plans.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the balance of my comments, and thank you, Jeremy, I really appreciate you coming and clarifying that. The balance of my comments are along a very similar theme, which is that we authorized this 25 years ago. And some of the prescriptions in here are very specific. The one I would highlight for rhetorical purposes is the seed mix requirement in the remediation standards. I have no idea if that seed mix is still commercially available, if it's still recommended. I think that this agreement could be improved if language was inserted, allowing maybe at the county engineer's discretion for, you know, a switching out of some of these very precise prescriptions. So I'm curious to hear what the board thinks of that, what the attorney thinks of that, what the applicant thinks of that.
Well, we're happy to use the seed mix that Joy and Adam or your commissioners want to use. We're just wet with, like you mentioned, the previous specs. So if there's something that's improved, and we're good with that.
And just for my part, we do have last revised and adopted in 2012, our best management practices manual that provides for 2 additional seed mixes. I don't know how exactly they compare to this particular one. In practice, typically when we're revegetating, we as long as it's a suitable seed mix for the intended use there, then it's usually acceptable to staff, and that we don't often dig too far into the seed mix itself.
So what I'm hearing you say is that some of these minor issues, if that seed mix is not viable, you would go ahead and authorize something else, and we're fine. Like my intent is for the board to be out of the way, right? For a 25-year-old plan to be able to be implemented.
In practice, we have, if a developer comes to us, whether it's a single family residence or, developing, a road, and they need to revegetate the disturbed areas outside the road. And in either case, if they come to us with a viable revegetation plan that is from a suitable source, that is providing a mountain mix that is similar, because some of these are ratios of seeds that, so if they have a little bit different ratio in their seed mix, then that would typically be accepted. And you can, in most cases, I don't know that the vegetation has changed that much. Like I said, we can certainly compare what the standard is for this particular subdivision and what's outlined there and compare that to our currently used best management practices manual and see how those line up. Certainly in road and bridge projects, we've accepted, recommendations from our designers and environmental scientists that have looked at a spot in particular and said, hey, this is what we would recommend. Then that's usually what we'll do on road and bridge projects. I understand that this is a very precise requirement for this particular subdivision. So we'd want to look at that closely, but if they had a proposal to us, I think in practice, it would typically be accepted as long as it was something that was suitable for its intended use.
Okay, and Peter, you agree with that? We don't need to change the language for this kind of flexibility?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay.
So just to clarify what I was saying a moment ago, I would like the board to be out of the way as well, but we've each brought things up here that we have found of interest. And what I liked that I heard a lot from Mr. Wallach was in the spirit of what I talked about, the analogy that I gave for a recent other development, that if there is something out there in our best practices or that we know is not codified at this time, but that if there's anything else that, for example, our fire authority believes that if we have a 25-year-old plan built on some 40-year-old requirements, and there are any elements of that would help improve this, that's not an onerous burden to the developer, and obviously that we can't require if it's not legally in place at this time. I am encouraged by the fact that he said he'd like to know anything like that. So that if it's feasible, he could modify the plan to build a safer neighborhood. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Just some observations. I don't think there's much that can be done about this. The fee in lieu that's a dollar amount that was set in the year 2000, correct? Or has that number been adjusted since 2000?
It has been adjusted. That was an estimate that was the whole opinion of cost that's attached to this agreement is something that was currently developed as part of this subdivision improvements agreement. And it is, that being said, it is a bit vague, this requirement that was imposed to provide for this deceleration lane, because there was never any design plans developed for that. So, of course, if that required a large retaining wall or something, then it would be a lot more expensive. So I think that the developer has made a good effort and estimating a typical cost for the materials and the work, if there wasn't any, extraordinary circumstance that required, to address a particular drainage situation, or which we know, may be there. We can see all the work that's happening at that intersection now. They're doing a lot of drainage improvements, and of course, the roundabout that's being constructed is a lot larger than what was required as a condition of the subdivision. But I believe that the developer has made a good effort in estimating a typical cost for that. That was provided for CDOT. That was as some previous discussions before the formal referral process. Some of us discussed this proposal to develop this phase 3 of Saddleback with some CDOT staff. And that was the feedback that we got from them at that time, because that was our big question as staff was, well, it doesn't make sense to us to have a requirement that they build a deceleration lane at this point. It's not really going to fit into the current plans for that intersection. So when we went to CDOT, less formally than the referral request, that was the feedback that we got from them was, hey, yes, we don't want a deceleration lane there. How about you help contribute to the cost of the roundabout?
Okay. thank you. That's the balance of my questions. I will be happy to approve this thing.
And before you do so, thank you for that. And I just wanted to provide one more comment, as I thought about it a little bit more and our previous discussion about construction of roads. This is one way that roads get constructed here in Clear Creek County. I think this is a very, well thought out way of developing a road where we do have a developer come in and say, hey, we want to develop an area, and then they provide for the infrastructure needs, including access on that. And so that's how we do get some of the roads as part of the subdivision process here in Clear Creek County. Others, as we know, have just evolved over time from, mining roads or Forest Service roads or whatever that may be. But this is just one example of how those roads can be constructed, that we put that onus on the developer and say, hey, you want to develop these lots, you need to provide access to these, and in this case, they're doing so. And in the past, I think the fire authority seems pleased with how this particular development, and I think Road and Bridge and hopefully the Metro District is pleased with the condition of the road after they've been constructed there as well.
Thank you. Any other questions from Randy?
No.
Okay, just two comments for me. One is, moving forward, when we get big subdivision agreements that we know are going to take many years to build out, let's try to put language into these agreements that kind of allows for flexibility as standards change and science develops. Just kind of putting down a marker there. Second, I note in here that the developer is agreeing to communicate with Clear Creek Fire Authority about emergency road closures, et cetera. I just want to state here in this public meeting that I don't think we should change this agreement. I think that Jeremy Jones is going to nod his head when we say it would be reasonable to expect that if you hear about your inability to get somewhere, that our paramedics would hear about it too, et cetera. So thank you for that head nod, and that's all from me. I would welcome a motion.
I move that we approve the subdivision improvements for phase 4 of Saddleback Mountain subdivision.
Just
I was scrolling back up to read to the top to see what I was going to move. Thank you for beating me to it, Mitch.
Peter's gonna fix it though.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So you're moving to approve the subdivision improvement agreement for the development of phase 4 Saddleback Mountain District. So
thank you.
Subdivision rather. Thank you.
Second that.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Motion passes. Brian?
I just want to say a public thank you to Stoy for stepping up. We're doing a little bit of a restructuring in our planning and building area. We got a couple positions that we're trying to get filled. One's filled, but one is not yet. So thank you for taking this on. We do appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Thank you, commissioners.
Thanks, Toy.
Excellent.
Thank everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. Next on the agenda is consideration of approval of forest receipts allocation agreement for 2023 forest receipts distributed in 2024 between Clear Creek County and the Clear Creek School District RE1. Peter.
Sure. So this comes back to the board pretty much every year pursuant to statute CRS 30-29101. The county receives forest receipts every year. It also receives PILT receipts. So forest receipts are money, that's money earned from uses of forest land based on the amount of land, U.S. Forest Service land there is in the county. By statute, 25% of that must go to a local school district, and 25% of that must go or be dedicated to the county's road and bridge fund. The remaining balance is to be negotiated between a county and a school district. We also receive PILT payments, which is not what you're approving today. By law, counties that receive forest receipts have the amounts of those receipts deducted from their PILT payments, unless they take that remaining 50% of forest receipts and give it to a school district. So that's pretty much what the board has done in the past. means that 75% of the forest receipts ultimately get paid to the school district. But as a result, we have nothing deducted from the ultimate the PILT payments that come in later in the year. So staff recommends that that's what the board do, but of course, that's completely up to you guys.
So this decision amounts to, there's some money that the federal government could give to the school district through us if we're willing to accept it.
Right. And one other thing to note is, so there is an agreement. I looked in the packet. It seems to have two unsigned versions of the same agreement. So the signed version didn't seem to make it to the packet, but we do have the signed version. School district has already accepted it.
Yeah. Well, this is a no-brainer every year. We've managed to get confused a few times in conversations trying to understand this simple concept, but the basic thing is it's the same amount of, I mean, yes, we get to keep this forest receipt. We just give up PILF as a result. And so George described it well. Functionally, the way it operates is it's just money passing through us. And we're simply denying the school district that federal fund if we were to not approve this.
Correct.
I want the record to reflect that the board is going to do this because we love schools and students.
And I do want to clarify one thing that it's mentioned. So even though it is in a way, it's a pass through, the forest receipts dollars have to be used by either a school district or a road and bridge fund specifically in a county. Whereas PILT funds can go right into the general fund. They don't go into the road and bridge fund. So as a result, even though the amounts are the same, where you can draw that money from and the purpose you can use it from is different. And that's why we want to maximize the PILT.
Right.
I was unaware of the flexibility. Thank you.
Any other like expressions of support for education or anything else before we go with this?
I certainly concur. I mean, we support kids. We support schools and education for them. I wouldn't go as far as to support guys with white hair and beards and striped shirts, but other than that, of course we do. Of course we do.
It's actually kind of crosshatch. It's a little hard to tell from your. Anyway, okay. Do I hear a motion? And can you help us articulate that motion, Peter?
The motion will be to approve the forest receipts allocation agreement for 2023 forest receipts distributed in 2024 between Clear Creek County and Clear Creek School District RE1.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any discussions, further expressions of support for education?
I love it. That's all.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. We are on the last item on the agenda. This is a standing agenda item. We do work sessions just to keep each other updated on the Clear Creek Fire Authority organizational review. Thoughts, board, staff?
The next meeting is tomorrow night. I emailed out the draft the example Loveland survey to everyone last night. This morning, while you were reviewing abatements, I sent out Peter's overview of governance and funding options. So we asked everyone to review both of those documents in addition to pages 83 through 89 on the mission CIT report, which outlines their thoughts on the funding and governance options. So again, next meeting's tomorrow night, and we do have a facilitator. Her name is Laura Hickey. We pitch hitting for Jonathan. She works with Jonathan at CDR. So, and the agenda, all those things I just talked about will be going out this afternoon after Beth and I get together. It's close to being ready to get out. So,
Remind me who's going to pay for the communication proposal if it moves forward.
I think early on in the process, the board had indicated that we were willing to cover that.
So we want people to agree, but we don't need people to agree.
I think more importantly, we need to know what we're surveying. I don't think we know that right now.
Okay.
Yeah. other than expectations of fire service. Mission CIT actually reached out to me with some thoughts on questions related to a survey, which I thought were pretty good, so.
Well, I would support better understanding what we want what we want that organization to look like in the future. And what the members of the community feel they'd like to see in that organization.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see the conversation evolve to a place of just what do we need? What kind of system works well for us? The history is rich. And I think sometimes we get wrapped around the axle.
Actually, I want to comment on the last meeting because I feel like there may have been a little bit of confusion in the room when Jonathan was asking everyone to think about, you know, what's the importance of the vision for the fire authority? And the confusion in the room was, are we creating a vision for the fire authority or is it for the people in this room? And the reason for that doing it and designed in that way was to highlight what's important for us, for the people in this room who are discussing the fire authority. What are the parameters that are extremely important for us moving forward? And then how do you then using those parameters that everyone in the room agrees to assess them against the governance models, the funding models, et cetera. That was the purpose of that exercise. And we're going to continue that kind of a conversation tomorrow night.
That might be a good way to start the meeting.
Right. It's, you know, what are the outcomes we want from this, right? That's the big question for everybody in that room.
That's where we were getting wrapped around the axles a little bit there was some confusion around people thinking that when we were functionally operating that we were going to have to get 29 people together to make decisions going forward into the future. And that wasn't the intent at all. It was how are we establishing metrics now that we can use going forward and make sure that we're hitting those metrics.
Something that I would like for us to get onto an upcoming agenda for this work is what does integration look like? What are the models that are out there? Sean was chasing this conversation and I think on an agenda, we had several org charts for integrated services. I don't know exactly how to pick up on the research that Sean did and was prepared to present. But I think that information is really important.
Actually, Aaron did the research.
Aaron did the research. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe we can ask for some agenda time for Aaron to share. Maybe even we ask Aaron to have a conversation with fire authority staff and do some kind of joint, like, here are the options and some thoughts about the options. That's one of the big things that we have to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, we're heading down a path this year where we're probably coming to you and asking for a new ambulance and 3 more paramedics in order to handle the increased workload that we're seeing, their increased level of number of calls. That's today, and that number just continues to go up. Yeah, the short answer to your question is you have a completely combined department where you're a paramedic and a firefighter and you're going on both kinds of calls, to a split department where you're only going on paramedic or EMS calls or a fire call, much like Evergreen. I think one thing that saves us is if we had a firefighter driving an ambulance down the hill, which kept more of our EMS team here in house. I mean, that's another kind of not all the way to consolidated, but a version of it. But I think it would probably be helpful for everybody in the room to hear that.
I think so too.
I think you should bring that up during the meeting tomorrow night.
I would like to add that when we were discussing a wildfire mitigation ballot measure, there's an organization out there, Healthier Air and Water Colorado, that has a program that helps local governments campaign for dedicated revenues. I think it was the wildfire mitigation element of that tax proposal that got them to the table with us, but they were ready to invest. And we might want to, I'm going to reach back out to see if that program still exists. Because we know there's a ballot measure on the other end of this conversation. There's a future where we agree and we're enthusiastic about the solution, and the mayor of Empire and the mayor of Idaho Springs and the Board of County Commissioners are singing the same tune about the tax revenues we need. I don't think I have anything else. Well, I will note, Peter, thank you for putting together this legal overview. I'm gonna try to put some thought into just jog my memory about the questions that came up in the meeting last week. So that anything that pops up, I might ask you to address this afternoon.
Okay, and just a reminder to the other board members, I won't be at the meeting tomorrow night. I'll be on my way to a conference.
Have we identified the steps that are necessary between where we are and where we want to go? Or do we just have meetings? Do we know what we're trying to accomplish? I don't need the details, just a yes or a no.
I think it's a discussion of how the future of governance of fire service, right? And those are the options that Mission CIT laid out, from the status quo to the Title 32 to the coming into the county.
So an early milestone would be trying to get everybody to agree on a governance model.
Right, and that's, and again, that goes back to the purpose of identifying those vision and values of what's important to fire service to then help you assess the various outcomes or the various governance models.
Hearing a succinct answer was nice. Thank you.
It's a great question, and maybe a question we should pose to the facilitator moving forward is like, can you help us map out a process here? I notice not all of our partners in these meetings feel their time is being used well currently. So we should, we need to find a way to make these conversations efficient.
I think that stems from two different things. One is we have different part of what we're doing is resolving where it is we want to go, and people have different ideas about where they think we should go. And so that's why it's hard to say, well, what we're trying to do is figure out where we want to go. If we already knew where we wanted to go and we all agreed on that, we wouldn't be having these meetings. So it's a little hard to pin it down. So the real thing we're trying to do is find common ground and agreement, so that on 2 or 3 particular major areas like governance and funding and operations and integration, all those things. And I think part of the reason that people sometimes feel their time isn't being used well is partly because we kind of fumble around in circular conversations about it, but also partly because some of the partners, I'm sure, in the room feel like, why are we even talking about one of those items? That they don't see the need to even talk about it to begin with, while others in the room think that there is a need to talk about it. As long as, a significant number of people think there's a reason to talk about it, then there is. And so that's kind of the pain of trying to do this and why we got a facilitator. And I agree with you, George, that having Jonathan, I think it was George just said that. I'm sorry, I'm kind of fuzzy today after an hour's sleep last night. I think defining why we're here in the room could be very helpful to have people understand the value of their presence here in the meetings. To reiterate that to all of us, that this is why we're here, so we can find common ground to, have the best fire authority in the safest community that we can have.
Okay. Is there a risk in inviting the fire chief to actually sit at the table instead of the back of the room?
No, there's not a risk. That invitation has been made in every meeting.
By numerous people.
Okay.
It's a choice.
Okay. As long as he's not being left out. It's a self-selection. Okay.
I think we should keep encouraging.
Okay, I don't think I have anything else on that. Gratitude to staff for carving out bandwidth to pay attention to the fire department. That's not ours.
He did period of heavy lifting.
Yeah, but we'd be in deep trouble if it wasn't effective.
We would be. It's really important.
We have a vested interest here.
That's why we're there.
Okay, I think I'm gonna declare this work session over. Unless anybody has any other comments, burning comments. Okay, work session is over. Thank you for your time. We have nothing else on the public agenda.
So should we have a motion to adjourn?
I don't even think we need a motion. I think I just have that dictatorial authority. We are adjourned.
You are good.
No exec.
There is no executive session.
All right, great. All right.
Right.
Thank you all.